I have a suite at the end of the world. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 876, 3 Directions. Not yet. I just took a shower. Sit down anywhere. Jiang Chen replied with a smile. Sun Jiao nodded, and without thinking too much, she walked to Jiang Chen and sat down. At this time, she was wearing a simple business suit, and she was still emitting a faint jasmine fragrance. Looking at her cheek through her hair, Jiang Chen's heartbeat accelerated politely, but soon he collected his mind. It was so late to find him, obviously to discuss important matters with him. If he had any bad thoughts at this time, it would be too rude. It seemed that she smelled the smell of alcohol from Jiang Chen's breath. Sun Jiao sniffed, frowned slightly, and asked casually, when she opened the file, "Have you drunk alcohol? Is the smell so strong?" Jiang Chen was slightly stunned, and covered his mouth and nose with his hands and exhaled. He did smell something, but it was not as strong as he imagined. Many people toasted him at the party. Although they didn't drink strong liquor like brandy or whiskey, champagne can be intoxicating if you drink too much. Nothing, but there is an important meeting tomorrow. I suggest you drink less before going to bed. Sun Jiao said. I've already drunk it. I can't spit it out. Jiang Chen made a helpless expression, took the document from her hand, and looked at the places marked with red pen. What are these? Some lists. They are all high-tech companies with relatively high potential in Silicon Valley, and their scale is less than $10 million. Considering the company's future strategic needs, if we want to further expand the North American market, we must consider cooperating with local companies. Jiang Chen took a quick look at the list on the document. Not only did it list the main business areas of each company, but it also marked the equity structure, operating conditions, assets held. Sun Jiao even gave a clear valuation for the upper limit of the acquisition price of each company. It can be seen that she was very serious when doing these tasks. Thank you for your hard work. This is my job. Sun Jiao answered as usual, tucking her hair behind her ears, and then said, the content of this high-tech innovation conference is very broad, but there are only 3 hotspots that need our attention. Smart medical care, new materials, and cloud technology. Of course, this is just my opinion. If you have other ideas, we'd better communicate in advance. My idea is basically the same as yours. Jiang Chen smiled and nodded. In addition to the aerospace project, the next strategy of Future Group will basically develop in these 3 directions. New materials are needless to say, of course. Graphene is the main one. Developing a variety of graphene materials to meet different market needs is also the current focus of the materials science laboratory of Future Group. In addition to semiconductor graphene materials used in electronic devices, high-strength graphene has also been used in construction, ships and other fields to a certain extent. The market for smart medical care is also quite large. At present, the Beta 4 medical drone invested in Penglai City has made good progress. Through infrared sensing devices to measure body temperature, saliva analysis, iris detection and other convenient functions, it can solve some small and medium-sized viral colds and minor forehead abrasions and falls. This is a great tool for the convenience of the people in capitalist countries, where doctors have to be booked in advance to see a doctor. Jiang Chen is even considering whether to install a medical module on the home robot. After all, the size of the robot can carry more medical equipment, and for middle-class families, a private doctor of about $20,000 is not difficult to afford. As for cloud technology, this is mainly related to the quantum computer of the Future Group. Since acquiring the manufacturing technology of civilian-grade quantum computers, the factory in the 6th block has produced a lot of quantum computers, and Jiang Chen brought them to Koro Island. Now the number of quantum computers held by the Future Group has far exceeded its own needs. It is entirely possible to sell information processing services with a cost effectiveness far higher than that of supercomputing centers to other companies through quantum satellites and cloud technology. According to Sun Jiao's proposal, the Future Group can acquire several medium-sized companies on the west coast of the United States, whose business scope includes smart medical care, graphene, and information services, and do business with Americans through the hands of Americans. This is also to reduce the vigilance of the federal government. After all, no country wants to see its domestic market share divided by foreigners. Especially national healthcare and information security. These two issues are hyped up in every presidential election, which shows how much the federal government attaches importance to them. The more attention they attach, the more vigilant they are about outsiders interfering. So Future Group needs to find smart enough partners at this high-tech innovation conference. The list provided by Sun Jiao has clearly written down the companies that are worth acquiring, and the valuations are all between 10 million and 20 million US dollars. It is more than enough to acquire them with the working capital of Future Group. Jiang Chen just glanced at it casually and nodded to the proposal. The only trouble is whether the US Department of Commerce will interfere. Chinese companies have repeatedly hit a wall in the United States, which is inseparable from this annoying organization. For example, Huawei's acquisition of 3Leaf, a small American technology company, was rudely terminated by the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, SYNOPSIS, on the grounds that Huawei may have connections with the Chinese military. Although the threat of Singapore to the United States is not as great as that of China, the US Department of Commerce can be said to be an old enemy of Future Group since the antitrust investigation. The next day, Jiang Chen's schedule was to visit Mr. Pritzker, who had come all the way from Washington to Los Angeles. It can be said that his opinion basically determines whether the acquisition of Future Group in the high-tech innovation conference can proceed smoothly. The next day, Jiang Chen met Mr. Pritzker in a hotel, who was preparing for the high-tech innovation conference. This time, more than 500 Chinese companies will participate in the Silicon Valley High-Tech Innovation Conference. Pritzker not only represents the US Department of Commerce and the attitude of openness and cooperation in the United States, but also represents the White House in Washington, D.C. Welcome, Mr. Jiang Chen, although the same words have been said at the airport. After seeing Jiang Chen, Pritzker greeted him with a smile and shook Jiang Chen's outstretched hand. How are you doing in Los Angeles? Are you used to it? Very satisfied, but there is less freedom. Jiang Chen teased. After all, for your safety, we have to be careful. After Pritzker invited Jiang Chen to take a seat, he asked his assistant to go to the kitchen to make 2 cups of coffee. I wonder what brought you here? After hearing Pritzker's words, Jiang Chen did not beat around the bush. He smiled slightly, took out a document from his briefcase, and placed it on the table. The organizer of the high-tech innovation fair provided us with a document with a list of companies participating in the exhibition and the main business of each company. We selected a group of potential companies from this list, based on our own channels. You know what I mean. I plan to acquire them. Hearing this, Pritzker's eyes narrowed into a slit, and he whispered in a meaningful tone. Oh. Chapter 877 Negotiation Deadlock. Jiang Chen gently pushed the document in front of Pritzker. Pritzker leaned forward and glanced at the document. When he saw the long list of names, his eyebrows twitched slightly, and he spoke in a nonchalant tone. These companies, are you going to buy all of them? Of course not. Even with the financial resources of Future Group, it is impossible to buy all the companies on this document. Jiang Chen waved his hand and continued. We just have this intention. But you know, you have to abide by the rules of the game, wherever you do business. Rules of the game. That's the business of the Foreign Investment Committee. Our Ministry of Commerce can't control that far. Pritzker shook his head and said, Mr. Pritzker, let's not beat around the bush. That will only waste our time. You invited us here, not just to let Future Group go through the motions and give a few hours of opening remarks for closer cooperation with Silicon Valley, right? Jiang Chen spread his hands and then tapped the documents on the table with his fingers. My sincerity is already on the table, and I hope to see your sincerity. Although the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States involves 8 administrative departments and 7 White House agencies, if there is a disagreement, the president will have to make the final arbitration. but as long as it does not involve the three major factors of the United States defense production capacity, the sale and resale of military technology to specific countries, and whether it affects the United States technological leadership in the field of national security, the Ministry of Commerce will make the final decision. Jiang Chen, who had done his homework in advance, was very keen to notice that Pritzker was avoiding this topic. This also indirectly shows that the Ministry of Commerce intends to intervene. Fingers tapped lightly on the armrest of the chair. Pritzker did not give a reply, and silence lasted for a long time between the two. Jiang Chen was not in a hurry. He had a morning to solve this problem. The young assistant served coffee to the two of them. Jiang Chen touched the cup with his finger to test the temperature. At this moment, Pritzker finally spoke and said softly, "The White House is happy to see your company cooperate with Silicon Valley companies in technology, but as for your company's behavior of turning its own high-tech companies into its own companies, excuse me, no matter who is president, I'm afraid it won't be considered a good thing." Jiang Chen was not surprised to hear Pritzker's statement. It is better to say that it is a great achievement to let this cunning Secretary of Commerce put the problem on the table and not fight this take-eye. As long as they are willing to talk, it means that there is still a possibility for the two sides to reach an agreement. Jiang Chen smiled slightly and pushed his chips on the negotiation table. You know, there are not only 1,000 plus American companies participating in the High-Tech Innovation and Entrepreneurship Conference, but also 500 plus companies from China. Of course, the Silicon Valley High-Tech Innovation and Entrepreneurship Conference is originally oriented towards North America and Asia. Pritzker nodded. Then you should also know that I don't have the habit of returning empty-handed. Jiang Chen also smiled, raised 3 fingers, and then said, I'll be frank. The future development direction of Future Group is graphene, smart medical care, and cloud technology. If we get stuck in the North American market, we will shift our focus to Asian countries that are more willing to cooperate. Pritzker's eyes moved slightly. Although it was very subtle, Jiang Chen, whose senses were far superior to ordinary people, still captured this small movement very keenly. Graphene and cloud technology aside, smart medical care is of great significance to the federal government. Since the Obama era, the Democratic Party has been actively promoting medical reform to improve domestic medical conditions. Unfortunately, during his administration, Comrade Guan He encountered the largest fiscal deficit in the history of the United States, accounting for more than 12% of the US GDP, the highest ratio of fiscal deficit to economic output since World War II, and there was no money to promote medical reform. Moreover, reforming the medical insurance system has always been one of the most controversial issues between the Democratic and Republican parties. The two parties have clear opinions on the causes and solutions to the sharp increase in domestic medical costs. The success of the Beta 4 medical drone in Penglai City has attracted the attention of all countries. At this high-tech innovation conference, many American companies are also considering introducing this advanced medical drone. For the White House, although Beta 4 does not help alleviate the domestic drug prices that are among the highest in the world, it can effectively reduce the cost of medical treatment for the American people. If this convenient and efficient drone is introduced in the clinic, it will be as easy for Americans to see a doctor as to call the police. They only need to make a phone call to summon the Beta 4 drone deployed in the community clinic to their home. For companies, the cost of purchasing drones is significantly lower than paying salaries for extra doctors. For the federal government, it can save a large amount of financial subsidies for medical treatment every year. Although it will definitely be protested by the American Medical Association, Doctors Union, it will definitely be welcomed by all Americans who are troubled by the difficulty of seeing a doctor. It's totally fine for you to sell drones. The United States is a free market. As long as your products are safe, we won't set too many obstacles for you like some countries do, Pritzker said. The same goes for graphene and cloud technology. But I don't understand. What does this have to do with your acquisition plan? Of course, it's for pricing power, as well as the sales resources of those companies themselves, and some technologies that they are interested in. For example, if Future Group wants to sell Beta 4 drones to major private hospitals, it is impossible to recruit and send salesmen from Future heavy industry to knock on doors and negotiate one by one. This is not only inefficient, but also very slow to promote. As for expecting companies to come and buy it, I'm afraid it's even less efficient. After all, not all companies are willing to take that risk to change their existing business models. This is just like the reason why most companies are still producing silicon-based electronic devices, even though graphene materials are excellent in all aspects. Even Intel has not completely stopped the research and development of higher performance silicon-based chips, even after buying patent licenses from Jiang Chen. When Watt invented the steam engine, it didn't mean that all the textile factories in Great Britain changed their equipment overnight. Even in the late stage of the Industrial Revolution, no one dared to say that the penetration rate of steam engines reached 100%. Wait and see first. If the peers use it well, then slowly adjust. This is the safest approach. In addition, Beta 4 is different from the banned Hummingbird drone. It was completely developed by technicians in the present world, and its own technical content is the most advanced. If other companies imitate similar products during this period, even if the effect is not as good as Beta 4, as long as the sales are good and the price is low, they can still take a lot of market share from future heavy industry. Only by seizing the high ground of the market in the shortest time can we maximize our profits. Either seek a partner or acquire directly. Future Group has the capital, and in order to control the pricing power, Jiang Chen will of course choose the latter. From the perspective of the Beta 4 drone, if Future Group can acquire a pharmaceutical company and use its own cooperative relationship with major hospitals and its experience in the pill and medical equipment industry to promote the Beta 4, it will definitely be much easier than for Future Group to set up a new subsidiary from start to finish to be responsible for it. The same is true for graphene and cloud technology. It is precisely because of this that Jiang Chen's negotiations with the US Department of Commerce have reached a deadlock. Chapter 878 Robert's Villa. The morning negotiations did not make any progress, and Pritzker said he would contact someone in the White House. Jiang Chen was not in a hurry. After all, there was still a week before the opening of the High-Tech Innovation and Entrepreneurship Conference, and he had plenty of time to wait for the results of the White House's discussion. Graphene and cloud technology have great value in the global market, but the Beta 4 drone is different and is not suitable for all markets. It can even be said that there is almost no market for it from the east coast of the Pacific to the west coast. Take China as an example. Putting aside some widely criticized but inconvenient issues, the medical procedure is much simpler than in Western countries. The status of doctors is not as noble as in the capitalist world, and the operating costs of hospitals are relatively low. Although the medical level may not rank well in the world, the cost effectiveness is undoubtedly in the forefront, which is also recognized by the world. This is also the reason why many people choose to come back to see a doctor when they get sick outside. In such an environment, the market space for the Beta 4 drone is naturally very narrow. Similarly, logistics drones are unlikely to be as popular in the North American market as in the Chinese market, which is also the reason why the product is not suitable for local conditions. After leaving the hotel where Pritzker was staying, Jiang Chen got into Lawrence's car. Not everyone can enjoy the privilege of having the FBI's SAC as a driver. Where are we going next? Los Angeles City Hall. It's still early. I have to visit the mayor of Los Angeles and have lunch with him. In the afternoon, I'm going to Hollywood. It's a rare trip, so I plan to meet my old friend. Jiang Chen looked through the schedule that Sun Jiao had arranged for him and said to Lawrence, who was sitting in the driver's seat. Surrounded by modern skyscrapers, the City Hall, which imitates the dome of the Mausoleum of Mausolus, looks retro and small, but its magnificent tower is still the most well-known landmark in Los Angeles. This municipal building often appears in Hollywood blockbusters, such as the Daily Planet newspaper where the protagonist of Superman works, which was filmed here. The motorcade soon arrived at the City Hall. In the square in front of the City Hall, Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti personally met Jiang Chen and ushered him into his office. It was very easy and pleasant to communicate with the mayor, but it was much easier than those officials sent from the federal government. The main reason for this was that Mr. Garcetti was more focused on the immediate interests rather than the interests of the entire federation. The local government and the federal government are two independent systems, which provided a lot of convenience for Jiang Chen. With only a blank check of $10 billion in investment, he got a lot of tax reduction and tax exemption preferential policies from the Los Angeles city government. Los Angeles now needs foreign capital investment too much. The soaring crude oil prices have caused the US dollar to continue to weaken, and the refugee problem has made the economy even worse. Although Los Angeles is the economic center of the west coast of North America, it is still difficult to get rid of the shadow of the economic crisis. Of course, the policy benefits Eric issued to Jiang Chen were also checks. When the future group's investment in Los Angeles is realized, these policies will be realized. But these are minor issues. Jiang Chen was quite optimistic about California's manufacturing industry before he came. According to the group's economic analysts, if oil prices continue to rise and the US dollar continues to weaken, a new round of economic crisis can be foreseen. If the future group can stand firm in the economic crisis with the highly self-sufficient trust model, it can completely free up its hands to acquire overseas assets. The west coast of the United States is the starting point for the future group to enter the North American market, and investing in Los Angeles is a good choice. After the business talk, Eric Garcetti enthusiastically invited Jiang Chen to have lunch at the City Hall, and Jiang Chen, who had long intended to do so, naturally agreed. The food at the City Hall was quite good, except that there was too much cream in the dessert, which made Jiang Chen a little reluctant to accept. The grilled black pepper steak and the creamy corn soup were really irresistible. After lunch, Jiang Chen said goodbye to Eric Garcetti and left the City Hall building. When he got into Lawrence's car, the agent's supervisor was leaning against the car door, drinking coke and chewing a beef burger. After seeing Jiang Chen get in the car, he quickly finished the food in his hand, stuffed the greasy hamburger paper into a plastic bag, threw it into the trash can next to him, and sat in the driver's seat. "Are you eating hamburgers for work? It tastes good." Lawrence grinned and started the car. "Going to Hollywood?" "Yes." Jiang Chen clicked on the holographic screen of the watch and swiped a translucent map in front of him with his finger. There was a red dot on it. "The specific location is here." Lawrence was obviously stunned when he saw the map in front of him, and then he said with some envy, "It's really convenient." Hollywood is located in the suburbs of Los Angeles, surrounded by mountains and rivers, with a mild climate and pleasant scenery. It is not only the center of the global music and film industry, but also a veritable rich area in Los Angeles. Many wealthy people will choose to buy villas here. If you can sign the name of producer on a big investment film, you will be the focus of attention at any party. For example, a guy who made a fortune from arms and gold is very happy about this. "Welcome. Haha, my old friend, you finally came to see me." Seeing that sly smile, Jiang Chen couldn't help but curl his lips and opened his arms to hug him. Although he had been with this guy for a short time, with the experience in Iraq, the relationship between the two was quite good. Otherwise, when he was in South Africa, he would not have taken such a big risk and let Jiang Chen handle the last batch of arms. Whether it was for the sake of dollars or not, he helped Jiang Chen a lot. "I just got off the plane yesterday. You have to let me adjust to the jet lag." "Mr. Agent Chief, long time no see." Roberts noticed Lawrence behind Jiang Chen and greeted him with a smile. Lawrence looked gloomy, lit a cigarette, blew a puff of smoke impatiently, and said bluntly, "I feel inexplicably upset when I see you jumping around." Roberts said with a playful smile, "Hey, man, don't be like this. At least half of your position is my credit." Lawrence curled his lips and said nothing, but he obviously acquiesced to this. Although Roberts was once on the FBI's blacklist, that was 2 years ago. The FBI can't keep an eye on a person for a lifetime. As long as he proves that he has completely withdrawn from the arms business, the FBI will naturally have no need to keep an eye on him. It's just that out of inertia, Lawrence subjectively feels uncomfortable watching this arms dealer who touched the political red line of the White House and finally live such a comfortable life. "Come in and have a drink together?" "No, I can't drink during work." Lawrence looked up at Robert's villa and declined Robert's invitation. "It's a pity that you missed a party," Roberts said, turning around and patting Jiang Chen on the shoulder with a smile. "Come on, man, let's go in and have a few drinks. I said I'd take you to Hollywood a long time ago, and I have a few acquaintances here who I can introduce to you." They're all very interesting people. You'll definitely be interested. Acquaintances? Jiang Chen raised his eyebrows and asked with interest. Yes, there are big directors and stars. Robert said with a wink. Chapter 879 Bad Rumors. It seems that Roberts is really doing well in Hollywood. He can own a 1,200 square meter villa with a lawn and a swimming pool in the beautiful Hollywood Hills, which is full of villas. It is definitely not possible without 10 million US dollars. The gym, steam shower room, sauna room, swimming pool, and home theater are all available. The balcony faces Los Angeles. You can overlook the night view of Los Angeles by leaning against the floor-to-ceiling window. There are green mountains on both sides of the villa. Just looking at it is refreshing. The living room is the highlight of the whole building. The fireplace is made of limestone. The modern-style milky white furniture combines the sense of lines and art, making home life comfortable and comfortable. At the same time, it also reflects the essence of the concept of high quality and low luxury in different eras. The large floor-to-ceiling glass windows with thick wooden beams on the arched roof echo the high-rise arched roof, rendering a strong Spanish Romantic style for contemporary home art. Roberts boasted to Jiang Chen while leading Jiang Chen into the villa. You didn't memorize the entire introduction of the real estate agent, did you? Jiang Chen couldn't help but complain. Absolutely not. Roberts waved his hand quickly, but then said, I only memorized a few paragraphs at most. At this time, after entering the living room, Jiang Chen heard a laughing shout from the balcony not far away. Hey, Roberts, are you ready? If you don't come again, we will take this bottle of champagne you have treasured for 10 years. Oh, shit. Don't do this. That's my life. Roberts shouted exaggeratedly, kicked his leather shoes aside, and walked into the house. The balcony was filled with laughter from men and women. Jiang Chen followed Roberts and walked into the living room together. Just then, a man walked through the open French window and walked over from the balcony. Haha, Roberts, where is the big shot you mentioned? If you just want to show off your relationship with those old friends of the FBI. Oh. Got you. You are Jiang Chen? The man who was originally smiling glamorously suddenly had his eyes bulged out, looking at the man next to Roberts in disbelief. Yes, nice to meet you. Jiang Chen smiled and stretched out his right hand. Although he felt that the guy looked familiar, he couldn't call out his name. Unless it was a director or actor he particularly liked, or there was an impressive feature, he generally wouldn't pay attention to the person's name. Let me introduce you. This is Bryan Singer. If you have seen X-Men, you must be familiar with him. Hearing the name Bryan Singer, Jiang Chen immediately matched his face with his name. Speaking of Bryan Singer, most people would associate him with the word X-Men. Since the success of The Usual Suspects in 1995, Bryan Singer officially stepped into the Hollywood circle from personal production. In 2000, the adaptation of X-Men directed by him achieved unexpected success, and then his directorial career was tied to X-Men. It's not that he didn't try to transform, but it was like being cursed. Whether it was Superman Returns or Jack the Giant Slayer, the box office failure made Warner Bros. Cry for money and cast a shadow on his directorial career. Hollywood is a realistic place. Whether a director's future is bright or not is directly linked to his box office performance. It's just that Jiang Chen remembered this guy's name not because of X-Men, but because according to gossip, this guy is bisexual. This is indeed an impressive feature. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you, Mr. Jiang Chen. I always thought Roberts was bragging, but I didn't expect this guy to be bragging. Bryan said excitedly, while holding Jiang Chen's hand. It's also nice to meet you, Mr. Singer. X-Men is also quite famous in my country. Yes, I have seen Apocalypse. Jiang Chen smiled and took back his hand calmly. Shaking hands with a gay man gave him goosebumps. Although it was just a rumor. After all, it was a party hosted by Roberts, an old pervert. In addition to those friends he made in Hollywood, there were also blonde and blue-eyed foreign horses. Some were Hollywood movie stars, and some were just as Roberts said. He had done well in Hollywood, and several box office hits made him a well-known producer. In addition to Bryan Singer, Jiang Chen also saw Alicia Vikander, the queen who played Laura in the Tomb Raider released this year, 2018, seemed to be the star of the party. However, Jiang Chen knew very well that even for Roberts, a veteran in the love field, such a woman was quite difficult. Just relying on her status as a producer was not enough to make her open her legs, and she performed easily at the party, and it didn't seem like she had a relationship beyond friendship with Roberts. However, when facing Jiang Chen, she showed a considerable degree of surprise and interest, just like the other people at the party. "Mr. Jiang Chen, can I invite you to my house for a cup of coffee after the banquet?" Alicia pursed her bright red lips and asked in a seductive tone when there was no one around Jiang Chen. This proposal was quite attractive. Everyone knew what coffee meant in this situation. "But, I'm sorry, manuscript. Alicia, this proposal is very tempting, but I'm afraid my temporary security consultant will not allow it." Jiang Chen declined her invitation with great regret. Rejected, Alicia Vikander just smiled slightly and was not discouraged. After a friendly chat with Jiang Chen, she turned to other circles. Jiang Chen, who is working closely with Warner Brothers, will undoubtedly help her acting career, and virtual animation has indeed shown its intention to enter Hollywood. But unfortunately, Jiang Chen did not seem to show enough interest in her, and she was also very tactful and did not approach him again. Not only big names like Alicia Vikander, but also many beautiful women cast eager eyes on him at the banquet. Emma Watson's endorsement fee is enviable, and it is also really jealous that she can get the role of the supporting actress in the epoch-making Iron Curtain of time and space. No one here is worse off than her, and no one will be willing to admit defeat. The party lasted until 8 o'clock in the evening. Unlike most private parties in Hollywood, this party that started in the afternoon was already time to end. The sea breeze blowing from the west coast brought a little coolness, blowing away the heat in the hearts of the guests. The guests shook hands with Roberts one after another, and left with laughter and satisfaction after the greetings. Except Jiang Chen. "How do you feel? This city, it's just so-so." Roberts chuckled and opened his collection with a bottle opener. The 65-year-old red wine was a brand that Jiang Chen had never seen before, but just looking at the color, it was not an ordinary product. What a harsh evaluation. Shaking his head, Roberts poured Jiang Chen a glass of his collection. The party seemed a lot more desolate and deserted after it ended, with wine bottles, playing cards and tinfoil used for drugs scattered all over the floor, reflecting the hustle and bustle of an hour ago. Jiang Chen shook the glass and took a sip of the sour wine. "Where's Nick? He's filming in Australia. It's a pity that he can't leave now, otherwise he would definitely not miss this party." After saying that, Roberts took a sip of champagne, let out a long breath, squinted his eyes, and stared at the night view of Los Angeles in the distance, and said to himself, "The first half of my life is in a dead end, and the second half of my life is drunk and dreaming. This feeling is really fascinating. Have you ever considered making a biography for yourself?" Jiang Chen teased. "That's a good idea." Roberts raised his glass to Jiang Chen from a distance, grinned, and continued to look at the night view of Los Angeles. "I have a hunch that, if my autobiography is taken out and made into a script, it will be like Lord of War. The box office and word of mouth will soar, and fame and fortune will be gained. Maybe it will be a big flop." Jiang Chen laughed. "Don't be like that, buddy." Roberts glanced at Jiang Chen and continued to drink. Of course, he only thought about making a movie about his personal biography, and it was definitely impossible for him to actually make a movie about it. Not to mention that it was impossible for him to write an autobiography at this age, as he once helped the White House sell arms. Even if he wanted to make a movie, the FBI would definitely not cooperate with him to discredit himself. Discrediting the federal government is politically correct in Hollywood blockbusters, but there are some bottom lines that cannot be crossed. For example, Lawrence once planned to use the IS to get rid of him and link the United States with terrorism, which is obviously not suitable for the big screen. Although it is a common practice in Hollywood to discredit Washington bureaucrats, even the audience will not buy it if it is discredited to this extent. Think about Fahrenheit 9/11 shot by Michael Moore. Although it won the Cannes Palme d'Or by severely slashing Bush, did he make any famous movies later? There are precedents for this. By the way, the movie Iron Curtain of Time you collaborated with Warner Brothers will be released soon, right? How do you feel about it? Please, I'm only involved in the production of the virtual animation under Futureman technology. I can't even go to the scene to see such a trivial project in person. Jiang Chen spread his hands helplessly. Roberts heard it and gave him a middle finger fiercely. Shit, in your Chinese language, this is called pretending to be cool. Your Chinese pronunciation is getting more and more standard. Jiang Chen teased. By the way, in which of your movies does Miss Watson appear? It seems that she plays. Roberts frowned and couldn't remember for a while. Deputy Captain. Wait, don't do anything to my actors. Jiang Chen said. Shit, am I that kind of person? Roberts glanced at Jiang Chen. He had automatically classified Emma as the kind of woman who had a special relationship with Jiang Chen. He leaned on the balcony railing and said, it's just that I heard some bad rumors recently. After all, you invested 100 million in this movie. I can't just watch my brother get cheated. What rumors? Jiang Chen frowned slightly. Chapter 880. Starting your own business. Someone is investigating Miss Watson. Roberts paused and then said, you know, I have some unclear connections with the underground forces in Los Angeles, although I have quit now. Someone hired a private detective to investigate Emma's past. But her image as a feminist is well managed, and so far those private detectives have not found anything. Isn't this good? Jiang Chen asked. Not good at all. Roberts shook his head, especially for those who want to find out something. Hearing Roberts' words, Jiang Chen frowned slightly, and he vaguely understood something. Asking a private detective to investigate a person has obviously crossed the bottom line of Hollywood's fair competition. This is different from hiring paparazzi and reporters to track and smear. Even when the 8 major distributors were in the most intense competition, they never said they would hire private detectives to investigate the actors of their competitors' movies. Since the other party has easily crossed the bottom line, they naturally won't care about the means. If there is no dark history of sufficient weight, then just create some. Emma Watson is the endorsement star signed by Future Human Biology. She has been printed on the packaging bottle of every nutritional mixture. She is also one of the actors in the film Iron Curtain of Time and Space co-produced by Virtual Animation and Warner Brothers. Although he does not need to personally deal with such a small matter from the perspective of the chairman of the group, it is related to his vital interests after all. Since he has heard it, he can't just listen to it and forget about it. Who could it be? Jiang Chen asked thoughtfully. I don't know. Roberts shook his head. I have paid attention to it, but the other party seems to be quite powerful. I'm no longer the arms dealer I used to be. The Los Angeles gang has no reason to give me face anymore, and protecting the privacy of the sponsor is the rule of their industry. Could it be a competitor of Warner Brothers? Jiang Chen frowned. It's unlikely. Roberts shook his head. Even if it is a competitor of Warner Brothers, choosing Emma Watson as the object of hype is a very stupid choice. Not to mention that the deputy captain, a supporting role, did not have a high role in the movie. He himself could only be considered a second-tier movie star in North America. The idea of dragging Future Man Biology, another subsidiary of Future Man Group, into the water was just crazy. As long as you check which movies are in the same period and who the distributors are that compete with Iron Curtain of Time and Space, the mastermind behind the scenes can't hide himself at all. In Hollywood, you don't need evidence, you just need to know who your enemy is. There are also many ways to solve the problem. Jiang Chen asked, who could it be? Maybe she offended someone. Or maybe she attracted someone's attention. Anyway, someone wants to ruin her reputation. It's that simple. Roberts spread his hands and said indifferently. After Jiang Chen pondered for a moment, he just kept this matter in mind. After he couldn't think of a reason, he didn't think about it anymore. Shaking his head, Jiang Chen put his mind back to the second thing he visited Roberts today. Let's not talk about this. Do you have any plans to do something together? Hearing Jiang Chen's words, Roberts immediately glanced at him warily. Dude, you know, I've retired. If you want arms, I can introduce you to someone. But you don't need me to introduce you. The California consortium led by the Chianini family is the largest arms boss in Los Angeles. Even if you want to buy a few F-18 Hornets, he can give you an idea. Get lost. I'm not talking about arms. Jiang Chen interrupted Roberts, coughed, and then said, I plan to register a film company in Los Angeles, and I'm still short of a CEO. Hearing that it was not arms, Roberts showed an interested look on his face, but he did not agree immediately. Instead, he asked the question he was more concerned about. Are you planning to start your own film company? Isn't your virtual animation cooperating with Warner Brothers? They hold their equity too tightly, and their finances are not transparent. Jiang Chen shook his head. Although we have a pleasant cooperation with Warner Brothers, there are still some small disagreements in the accounts. In addition, although the production of virtual shooting environments through VR modeling is the main business of virtual animation, I do not intend to turn it into an industrial light and magic that does OEM for major producers and has a place in Hollywood. Are you going to intervene in the distribution? Roberts looked at Jiang Chen strangely, put the empty wine glass on the table beside him, and poured himself another glass. This is impossible. The distribution rights of films are basically monopolized by the 8 major film companies. Don't think that you can put a movie on the big screen just by making it. The distribution of films is not much easier than the filming itself. Otherwise, with so many producers in Hollywood, why do they tolerate the 8 major film companies sucking blood from them? Because they can't get theaters for what they shoot themselves. In this era, where channels are king, good wine is afraid of being hidden in a remote alley. It is impossible for major theaters to rush over and beg them to bring the film to their place for screening, just because Future Group is very influential in the high-tech field. Roberts put the glass to his lips and took a sip. After a pause, he continued, as for the accounting problem, it's no news that Hollywood cheats foreign investors. They even dare to cheat Wall Street capitalists, not to mention investors from overseas. If you invest $100 million and the North American box office can reach $200 million, they will make a loss-making financial report and throw it on your desk. It's already very fair to you. At this point, Roberts emphasized again, even if you are a partner. Jiang Chen shrugged and said, so I found you. There's no reason why someone who dares to cheat the White House can't cheat the big 8 studios. Hey, man, who do you think I am? Roberts said dissatisfiedly. Old fox, or something else. Jiang Chen chuckled. Roberts gave a fierce middle finger and put the glass back on the table. This time he did not refill his glass. Over the years, he has developed a habit that it is okay to drink as much as he wants at parties, but he must stay sober when talking about business, and it is best not to drink a drop of alcohol. Come with me, I think we can plan this matter well. Leaving this sentence, Roberts turned and walked towards the living room. Isn't the distribution of the film monopolized by the big 8 studios? Jiang Chen whistled teasingly. Indeed, that's why I said, we have to plan it well. For example, how to cut a piece of meat off those vampires. Roberts said excitedly. So, you are going to take over the position of CEO? Roberts turned around and smiled. Why not? Working with you always brings me good luck. Chapter 881 Conspiracy. After exchanging opinions with Roberts, Jiang Chen finalized the plan for Future Group to enter the film industry. Jiang Chen will invest $1 billion as an individual to establish Morning Light Pictures. Morning Light Pictures is mainly responsible for the production and distribution of films and will have independent equity with Future Group. This is mainly to circumvent the Paramount regulations in the United States. Future Group may intervene in the screening of films in the future, but there is actually no difference. Both Future Group and Morning Light Pictures are highly controlled by him. Although the equity is independent, there is no difference in essence. After all, this is not his new country, so it is better not to mess around. Roberts was hired as the CEO of this company with a 10% equity and a base salary of $1 million. After more than 10 years in Los Angeles, he got rid of his identity as an arms dealer and worked in Hollywood as a producer for 3 years. With Roberts' connections in this city, he is more than enough to be the CEO. Of course, all this is still in the planning stage. At least for now, the cooperation between Futureman Technology and Warner Brothers is still in the honeymoon period. Everything will have to wait until Iron Curtain of Time and Space is released. When Jiang Chen walked out of the villa, it was already 8 o'clock in the evening. Lawrence was still leaning against the car, but this time he was not eating a hamburger, but smoking a cigarette out of boredom. Seeing Jiang Chen coming, Lawrence put out his cigarette. Where are we going next? Where else can we go so late? Jiang Chen yawned and sat in the co-pilot. I thought that, after attending such a party, you must have a date in the evening. Lawrence shrugged and said. 2 hours ago, he saw a group of Hollywood stars coming out of Robert's villa, including many blonde and blue-eyed beauties. According to the file the FBI created for him, this guy should be quite shameless. I'm trying to lighten your workload. Jiang Chen teased the serious agent's supervisor, fastened his seatbelt, and then said, I don't have any schedule for the next 2 days. You can consider taking 2 days off. No schedule? Lawrence raised his eyebrows. According to the security agreement between the two parties, Jiang Chen is obliged to provide the FBI with the itinerary for the next day, so that they can prepare. However, Jiang Chen's no schedule made him a little confused. Yes, I will stay in the New Zealand embassy for the next 2 to 3 days and exchange opinions with my CEO on the upcoming Silicon Valley High-Tech Conference. At the same time, some things in New Zealand need me to deal with personally. Jiang Chen skillfully brought out the set of rhetoric that he had prepared long ago. Lawrence looked at Jiang Chen suspiciously, but did not say anything about it. The arrangements within the future group did not allow him, an outsider, to comment. And he would never have thought that Jiang Chen would sneak out and visit Area 51 in Lincoln County in southern Nevada. At the same time, at the CIA headquarters in Virginia, a heated debate was erupting. Stephen, who had just returned from Los Angeles, went to his immediate superior, Naomi Madden, the director of the CIA, and tried to persuade him to start the investigation process against Jiang Chen. It's still unclear, is it a graphite bomb or an EMP? Naomi leaned back in her chair, turning the ballpoint pen in her hand, and listened to her subordinate's reports. However, at work, his capable subordinate did not buy it. Stephen raised his voice and argued, conclusion? What evidence do we need? If the testimony of 110 Ukrainian government soldiers cannot be used as evidence, then what else can be used as evidence? I'm sure it's EMP. It is indeed very difficult to distinguish between graphite bombs and EMP. Both can destroy power grids and damage electronic equipment, but the former can be too accurate and is ineffective against equipment that is too tightly sealed. Because the incident occurred at the most chaotic front line, even CIA agents could not go deep behind enemy lines and collect so-called evidence like detectives. Naomi's face showed a solemn look, but she still hesitated to make a decision. The Ukrainian issue is indeed very important, otherwise the project team led by Stephen would not be directly responsible for him. The Ukrainian government army reported that Russia used a weapon that can paralyze electronic equipment, which immediately attracted the CIA's high attention. After the airborne operation in Manila, I believe that no country will ignore EMP, the killer of modern civilization. Although all countries are protesting against this weapon, everyone knows that everyone is studying this weapon behind the scenes. The Pentagon suspects that the future group has provided assistance to the Russians, but the KGB has done a very good job in intelligence work, and the CIA has not collected relevant evidence for the time being. It is not even known what stage the cooperation between the two sides has reached. If it is a simple arms sale, it is fine, but if it is a technology sale, it is a bit bad. However, the people involved make Naomi quite difficult. The White House is sending friendly signals to the new country, but his capable subordinates propose to investigate Jiang Chen. Regardless of whether Jiang Chen is related to the weapons on the Russian-Ukrainian border, the CIA cannot investigate a guest from afar. The key point now is that, even if it is proven that these weapons came from the military factory on Anger Island, it was a transaction between future military and Russia, and they did not sell arms directly to the rebels. Naomi stopped spinning the ballpoint pen in her hand, leaned back in the chair, frowned and thought, this is difficult to do. Just because it is difficult to do, let them go unpunished. Stephen said bitterly. Naomi looked at Stephen with an excited face. He knew very well why his subordinate regarded Jiang Chen as a thorn in his side. The CIA once planned a kidnapping operation against Jiang Chen in China, but the whereabouts of dozens of CIA agents sent are still unknown. At first they thought that China had arrested the people, but after so many years, China's silence on this incident began to make them doubt whether it was really the Chinese intelligence department that got rid of those agents. The dozens of dead agents were all Stephen's comrades in arms, and he understood his subordinates' feelings at the moment. But for politics, Naomi would not approve his proposal. His predecessor resigned because he planned China's actions without authorization. As a CIA director who is close to the White House, he made the most conservative and correct choice. I will inform the White House. We can't ask the White House for instructions on everything. Please, we are the CIA, not the FBI, not the puppets of those White House bureaucrats. We should be responsible for national security. We can solve it in our own way. Too risky. Naomi interrupted Stephen immediately. However, Stephen did not give up. He raised a sinister smile and spoke word by word. I heard that the Freemasons have a feud with them. Naomi was slightly stunned, but Stephen did not miss this opportunity and said while the iron was hot, there is no risk. We are completely out of it. We only need to provide a little help to those who are eyeing us covetously. Naomi frowned slightly, as if she understood what Stephen wanted to say, but she still had concerns about whether it was feasible. If it is not good, it will provoke a war between the two countries. There will be no war, as long as the person who did it is not the United States, but the Freemasons. As long as we completely put it aside from the whole thing, we will not get into any trouble. All we need to do is. After a long silence, Naomi slowly spoke, neither clearly agreeing nor verbally rejecting, but giving an ambiguous answer. I hope Los Angeles will not become the second Bay of Pigs. Stephen finally smiled. He knew that the conservative and cautious director had finally been persuaded by him. I promise. Chapter 882. Welcome to Nevada. At 6 o'clock in the evening, Stephen walked out of the CIA headquarters, walked into the garage, and got into a black car. Just as he fastened his seatbelt and inserted the key into the lock, a Jewish man in a windbreaker opened the passenger door and sat next to him. Is it done? The CIA will assist you. The Jewish man smiled. Congratulations, Mr. Stephen, you can finally get your revenge. Stephen snorted and did not respond, but the smile on his lips was still very obvious. This is a little gift from us. As he said that, the Jewish man gently put a card in the storage compartment behind the gear lever, as if nothing had happened, looking straight ahead with a smile. I'm not helping you for money. Stephen frowned slightly. But you have no reason to refuse, right? The man smiled and said, and your efforts are definitely worth this amount. Stephen was silent for a long time and did not say anything else. The car drove through the bustling streets of Washington, D.C., with twinkling lights reflected on the car's windshield. This is the center of the prosperous world and the center of world power. The well-dressed people and the unattainable floors are intoxicating just by looking at them. Stephen suddenly laughed. It was indeed as the Jew said, he had no reason to refuse. After returning to the new embassy, Jiang Chen said goodbye to Lawrence, said goodnight to Sun Jiao who was still working, and returned to his room. Zhuu followed him in. Sun Jiao glanced at the location of Jiang Chen's room and said nothing. At this position, her level is enough to access some of the secrets of the future group. Jiang Chen also told her personally about the next trip to Nevada without telling the FBI. Although she was worried, she would not say anything to stop him. She just asked him to be careful and continued to focus on the matter at hand. After closing the door behind him, Zhuu, who was responsible for his safety in the embassy, asked, "Shall we go now?" "Yes." Jiang Chen nodded, unbuttoned his clothes, took off his suit and shirt, and threw them on the bed. The muscles of his upper body were exposed to the eyes of the girl at the door. Although the well-defined muscles did not have an explosive visual effect, they were full of a restrained and tight tension. However, after all, Zhuu had undergone professional agent training, and his heartbeat only accelerated for 2 seconds, without the blushing heartbeat that people like to see. Taking the bulletproof vest from Zhou's hand, Jiang Chen put it on. This vest, which is not much thicker than a shirt, is made of graphene material. Although it has limited kinetic energy restrictions on bullets, it can effectively intercept all bullets outside the body. Finally, he put on a windbreaker on the outside, took a Type 11 pistol from Zhou's hand, put it in his pocket, and then took out a K2 mechanical exoskeleton equipped with an optical stealth module from the closet, and put it on skillfully. The car is parked in the underground garage 2 streets across from the embassy. The coordinates are in your watch. Do you really not need our assistance? Zhou said hesitantly. Jiang Chen reached out and tapped the screen of the arm guard, set up the various parameters, and smiled and replied, "No, you are too worried. Aisha told me to tell you not to do anything dangerous. If there is an accident, please contact me immediately. I will. By the way, I need you to do something for me. What is it? ZHUU looked at Jiang Chen and asked. Emma Watson, an artist signed by Future Biological. Someone is investigating her recently. I'm curious who it is. That's easy. ZHUU said. Then I'll leave it to you. At the end of October, the sea breeze in Los Angeles has brought a little coolness, but it can't blow away the hot mood in the air. Night has already fallen, but the whole city is still immersed in the gorgeous neon lights and the nightlife rendered by the endless stream of car lights. Everything has just begun. Jiang Chen activated the optical invisibility, and without attracting anyone's attention, he quietly left the embassy from the back door and quietly walked past an FBI car. He could see the ash falling from the agent's fingertips, but he couldn't see him. 10 minutes later, in the underground garage 2 streets away from the Singapore embassy, a black SUV slowly drove onto the road and merged into the traffic in Los Angeles. The FBI would not know that Jiang Chen, who should have stayed in the Singapore embassy at this moment, had already boarded the SUV to Nevada. It has been a long time since he drove himself, but when Jiang Chen held the steering wheel, he did not feel unfamiliar. He had taken off the mechanical exoskeleton on his body and put it in the backpack on the co-pilot. In order to avoid being detained by the traffic police, Jiang Chen did not drive very fast, even after driving out of the city of Los Angeles. Now the whole United States thought he was staying in the embassy. If he was detained by the traffic police more than 10 kilometers away, there would be a lot of unnecessary trouble. If the car maintains the current speed and does not stop on the way, it should reach Nevada in 5 hours. Jiang Chen opened the holographic map and roughly estimated that it would be exactly 4 o'clock in the morning when he arrived at Area 51 in southern Nevada. Of course, he could not drive directly in. It would be a better choice to rest in a nearby town for a day and wait until the next night to sneak in. After leaving Los Angeles, the traffic was unusually smooth, and the scenery on both sides changed from high-rise buildings to desert dunes that were almost the same. To relieve boredom, Jiang Chen reached out and turned on the radio in the car. Although he did not like loud music, it would at least not make people fall asleep. On the road, Jiang Chen saw the shadows of many tourist buses. It is said that between California and Nevada, there is a tourist attraction called Death Valley in the civilized world. Most of the rumors about it are similar to the Bermuda Triangle, which are hyped by tourism operators. Jiang Chen wondered whether he should go to the nearby Death Valley after visiting the mysterious Area 51, but he soon gave up the idea. The end of October is not the peak season for tourism, but there will definitely be a lot of people at this kind of tourist attraction, so it is better to avoid unnecessary trouble. Just as he was distracted by the car next to him to kill time, his watch suddenly vibrated. It was only 2 hours later when ZHUU called. Jiang Chen tapped on his watch and answered the call. Hello. The person you asked us to investigate has been found. ZHUU's words surprised Jiang Chen a little. It was only more than 2 hours later, and the efficiency was so high that it was a bit scary. But after thinking about it carefully, Jiang Chen was relieved. After all, the other party was a private detective. Although they could use illegal means such as wiretapping and drone photography, they were definitely more amateur than professional agents. As long as they confirmed who the person being followed was, the ghost agent on standby in Los Angeles could easily catch the stalker. With the help of the truth serum, there was no information that could not be asked. The employer's name is Berkeley Lewis, the eldest son of the Lewis family. Lewis family? Berkeley? Jiang Chen frowned, and he couldn't find this name from his mind. Do you want me to handle it? ZHUU asked. No, Jiang Chen shook his head. Please keep an eye on him for me. If he does anything out of line, tell me. Yes, ZHUU answered neatly. The phone call ended, and under the din of heavy metal music, the black off-road vehicle left behind dust and gradually merged into the night. Standing beside the road was a sign that read, "Welcome to Nevada." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 883 Area 51. 51 is an area of about 155 square kilometers, located in Lincoln County in southern Nevada, 130 kilometers southeast of downtown Las Vegas, and is part of the US Air Force training facility. But everyone knows that this military base is definitely not used to train the Air Force as it is advertised. Only those with extremely high security levels and invited by the highest level of the military or intelligence agencies can enter the military base. Are ordinary pilots eligible to receive training here? Red prohibition signs can be seen everywhere here. No photography, no entry, and even authorized to use lethal weapons. Of course, there are also signs such as aliens, infested set up by nearby residents themselves. These serious signs can attract many tourists. In this country, where capital is supreme, there is nothing that cannot be hyped. The endless sand dunes are dotted with dry camel grass and countless cacti. Occasionally, one or two poplars can be seen, and from time to time, hares can be seen running through the bushes. A black off-road vehicle slowly stopped beside the flat and towering sand dunes. A few hours ago, it looked like a brand new car, but now it has been stained with a layer of grey and yellow by dust. The car door opened. Jiang Chen got out of the car, grabbed the travel bag from the passenger seat, threw it into the storage space, and squinted his eyes to look at the top of the sand dune. The sky in the distance has already been shining with a little morning light, and in a few minutes, it will be dawn. After crossing this mountain and walking for a few kilometers, you can see the legendary Area 51. However, Jiang Chen knew very well that, although this mountain was right in front of him, it would not be an easy task to cross it on foot. The straight line distance on the map is more than 10 kilometers. Note that this is a straight line distance. Jiang Chen carefully took out the special telescope, turned on the thermal imaging function and looked around. Every year, there are curious American climbers who rush into this desert with their bags on their backs, trying to run to the legendary Area 51 to find out. But fortunately, he only saw a few hares. After confirming that there was no one, Jiang Chen raised his hand and patted the off-road vehicle, threw the whole vehicle directly into the storage space, and then walked up the mountain. Not far from Area 51 is the Nevada test site, where the US Department of Energy tests nuclear weapons. Although he has not seen the sign prohibiting him from advancing, Jiang Chen is very clear that he has now stepped on the edge of the most guarded military restricted area in the United States. The slope of the sand dune is very gentle, so it is not a big problem to climb up, but it is definitely laborious. After walking until sunrise, Jiang Chen finally climbed to the top of the mountain. He took out the telescope and could already see the shadow of the military outpost at the corner of the opposite valley. A few kilometers further along the road is the legendary Area 51, but Jiang Chen certainly cannot walk in along the road. He took out the exoskeleton from the storage space and put it on. Jiang Chen did not activate the optical invisibility and just walked down the mountain. This is not a military restricted area, and the American soldiers on guard cannot keep their eyes on the telescope all the time. Looking from the sentry post opposite, you can only see the outline of a mountain. It is absolutely impossible to see clearly whether there are people on the mountain with the naked eye, as long as Jiang Chen does not make too much noise. After spending half a day, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Jiang Chen followed a large arc and went around the mountain on the side of the military base. There are many sensors hidden in the bushes here. If you touch them accidentally, they will immediately attract the attention of the patrol team. But it is not difficult for Jiang Chen to find these things. Carefully avoiding all the sensors, Jiang Chen lay behind a bush and took in the whole picture of Area 51. The iron net separates hundreds of square kilometers of land from the desert, and houses of all sizes are located in this military base. In addition to tanks and armored vehicles, you can also see the runway for aircraft. At least 5 F-35s are parked next to the runway. In addition, there are some aircraft that Jiang Chen can't name, but he thinks they are very cool. The architectural layout here is almost the same as the photos published on Google Maps, but there are still some subtle places. For example, the radar standing in the southeast corner of the military base attracted Jiang Chen's attention. Rather than saying it was a radar, it was a giant bowl embedded in the ground. There were upright booms standing on the four corners, and the diagonally connected slings were in the center, suspending a prop that looked like a launch column. According to the scale on the telescope, the diameter of this giant bowl was 200 to 300 meters. The antenna of the radar pointed directly at the sky. After thinking for a long time, Jiang Chen still couldn't figure out what it was. After hesitating for a moment, Jiang Chen pressed the side of his helmet, turned on the tactical camera function, and took a picture of the telescope. By the way, he also took a few close-ups of the entire military base. At this moment, a faint buzzing sounded in his ears, followed by a dizzy feeling that climbed up his brain, so that Jiang Chen couldn't help but frown. But soon, he relaxed his whole body and recovered from this sudden discomfort. The electric current sound in his ears disappeared without a trace, as if it had never appeared before. What happened? Jiang Chen shook his head to get rid of the remaining dullness, put away the telescope, and turned off the tactical camera. He noticed that at the moment he heard the electric current sound, even the holographic screen on his tactical helmet had a slight freeze. Could it be EMP? Jiang Chen rejected this idea in an instant. No matter how strong the electromagnetic pulse is, it is ineffective against humans. EMP cannot explain the dizziness at that moment. Compared with the high-energy transient current induced by high-energy particles in conductors, this feeling is more like some kind of super strong electromagnetic waves, or something else. Putting aside the doubts, Jiang Chen confirmed the patrol route of the military base through the telescope, and with the help of Jane, calculated a relatively safe sneak path on the map. The preparations for the day have been completed, and the next step is to wait until dark, and the plan can be implemented. I don't know what's going on at the embassy. Jiang Chen muttered softly. He said so, but he was not worried at all. If someone came to visit, Sun Jiao could also turn it down for him. Even if there were special circumstances, no one would suddenly break into the embassy of other countries. The coordinates have been set here. He left a camera that can transmit data across dimensions at the original place, and then traveled to the end of the world. The time of action is at night, and he is not interested in lying behind the bushes all day like a real sniper. Even in late October, the afternoon sun in California is very strong. Not to mention in the desert. Chapter 884, Change of Defense. Due to Hillary's refugee policy, the West Coast, which is far away from the political center, played a rather embarrassing role. The hundreds of thousands of refugees did not bring any substantial benefits to California, but seriously worsened the public security situation. The only benefit was to ease the employment rate. Yes, the employment rate has risen. Because among these refugees, hardworking and capable people are a minority after all, and most people are lazy and like to eat and work. Even if the mainstream society in the United States still looks at these people with sympathy in a politically correct way, the victims on the West Coast do not buy it. Although Hillary lost votes in California, this loss is insignificant compared to the supporters she got. After all, California is more inclined to plant, and her votes are concentrated on the East Coast. Of course, just getting a green card does not mean getting the right to vote. Only by getting the status of American citizenship can you cast a sacred vote for the president you trust in the general election. But it doesn't matter, the Hillary government is solving this problem. As long as the refugees become citizens before the next election. If there is anyone who is dissatisfied with Hillary's policies, it is undoubtedly the Jewish community in the United States. The grievances between the two sides have a long history, not just in religion. This hatred has long been integrated into the blood of both sides. They were divided by fighting against each other, and were defeated and expelled in the BC. This wandering lasted for more than 2,000 years. It was not until the French Revolution that the situation of Jews in Europe improved, and it was not until more than 30 years after World War II that they returned to their spiritual home. It is not difficult to understand the hatred between the two. It is enough to think of China and Japan, and then magnify it tenfold. Not all Jews are members of the Freemasons, but both the Freemasons and the Jews are absolutely staunch opponents of Hillary's refugee policy. The terrorist attack on the refugee protest team on Venice Street in Los Angeles on October 25 was not accidental, but an attack planned by the white xenophobic forces in the United States. A Hispanic youth born in Utah placed a 10-pound bomb and 200 steel balls wrapped in plastic bags in a trash can on the street. When the demonstration team passed by, he pressed the button on his mobile phone. It is conceivable that such a bomb would cause harm to the crowd. This is a disaster. Wow, we are just expressing our protest, but those racists are so mean. A woman from Libya said in tears when interviewed by a reporter from CBS. The mobile phone was placed on the roof of the car. Lawrence leaned against the car door, biting a hamburger, while looking at the mobile phone screen coldly. To be honest, although as a senior official of the FBI, his political stance should be as close to the White House as possible, but he has no sympathy for these people from the bottom of his heart. At this time, a business car stopped next to him, and a man in a suit and tie got out of the car, holding a black briefcase in his hand, and walked towards him quickly. Lawrence stuffed the last bit of hamburger into his mouth, swallowed it with Coke, turned off the phone, looked at his colleague, and said with a pleasant face, "Mr. William, what brings you here?" Michael William, the chief of the Los Angeles Police Department. Although the organization is completely different, due to work needs, the sheriff often has contact with people in the FBI and CIA systems. Like most Americans, Mr. William did not beat around the bush and spoke directly. There was a little trouble in the case the day before yesterday. We originally thought it was a lone wolf attack, but the evidence collected later overturned our previous speculation. Lawrence, we need your help. Lawrence glanced at the embassy next to him. Unfortunately, I'm working for the White House now. Oh, God, what is more important than the safety of Americans? Michael said earnestly, this attack is unusual. Someone in the country is deliberately provoking opposition between refugees and American citizens to prevent them from integrating into our society. Hearing this, Lawrence almost laughed out loud. Opposition? Is it necessary to provoke this? Stop. Do we have to kneel down and beg them to come in to be welcomed? Even black people with neurasthenia may be more diligent and capable than them. Of course, he would not be stupid enough to bring personal emotions into work. After pondering for a moment, Lawrence spoke. It's better for you to contact the FBI Los Angeles branch. I have other tasks now. Michael raised his hand to stop him from speaking, took out a document from his briefcase, and handed it to him. Looking at the document in his hand, Lawrence frowned slightly. The Los Angeles FBI branch is short of manpower, and it is customary to transfer people from Washington to assist in major cases such as terrorist attacks. If it involves overseas, CIA people will generally be sent. If it only involves domestic, the FBI will be mainly sent. At the same time, someone proposed to strengthen Jiang Chen's security. After all, the safety of this important person is related to the friendship between the two countries. For this reason, the CIA proposed a compromise plan. The CIA and the FBI will jointly be responsible for Jiang Chen's security, and half of the FBI agents who were replaced will devote all their energy to the recent terrorist attacks. The Silicon Valley High-Tech Innovation Conference in a week will also be mainly planned by the Los Angeles Police and the CIA. There is nothing wrong with this document itself. It just makes a little adjustment to Jiang Chen's security plan. However, for some reason, he vaguely realized something unusual. Having been in this position for so long, he is not the kind of idiot who has no political sense. I need to make a call to the White House, Lawrence said. As soon as possible. Michael said seriously. After returning to the end of the world, Jiang Chen went straight to Lin Ling's laboratory and handed the memory card on the tactical helmet to her. I want to know, what is this thing? After calling up the photos taken at noon, Jiang Chen pointed his finger at the giant radar and asked in confusion. Lin Ling just glanced at the picture, and a stream of data quickly flashed in her electronic eyes. She matched this thing with something that had appeared in history. She curled her lips and said with little interest, "It's just a large caliber radio telescope." Telescope? Jiang Chen was obviously stunned. How can this look like a telescope? Isn't it just a radar? You don't think that a telescope is called a telescope because it has a mirror? Lin Ling glanced at Jiang Chen. Well, I do think so. Jiang Chen held his forehead, paused for a moment, and then asked, what exactly is this thing used for? It is mainly used to detect electromagnetic waves in the universe. Don't look at it as just a bowl. There are countless radar arrays inside. Any weak electromagnetic waves can be captured by it and then identified and screened. It can be regarded as an early detector of extraterrestrial civilization. Lin Ling commented on the image. Extraterrestrial civilization detector? Jiang Chen's expression was a little strange. In this way, Area 51 is indeed somewhat related to the so-called aliens. However, judging from Lin Ling's indifferent attitude, this primitive telescope obviously did not capture any records of extraterrestrial civilization, at least on this timeline. Chapter 885 Invisible Ghost. Can you talk to Mr. Jiang Chen for me? In view of the recent security situation in Los Angeles, I have a document on defense adjustments. I'm sorry, he's resting. If you have any questions, you can talk to me. Standing at the door of the embassy, Sun Jiao declined Lawrence's request to visit as Jiang Chen requested. He is still in the heart of the Nevada desert, dozens of kilometers away, and it is impossible for him to come out to see him. Lawrence frowned slightly and glanced at the embassy. This is very important. I hope you can take it seriously. He has given me full authority to handle it. Sun Jiao replied in an uncompromising tone. Hearing that the CEO lady had said this, Lawrence no longer insisted, nodded, handed the document in his hand to Sun Jiao, and then turned and left the door of the embassy. Sun Jiao picked up the document and glanced at it. It was written in English about the recent security situation and the FBI's adjustment of Jiang Chen's travel safety work. According to the description on the document, it seems that the security level has been increased. As night fell, the Nevada desert returned to silence. Jiang Chen, wearing a mechanical exoskeleton, had returned to the real world. He was still behind the bushes. It was quiet around him, with only the rustling of the wind. The lights lit up Area 51, and high-power searchlights evenly cruised around the military base. Tonight's night was no different from yesterday, and all the soldiers stayed at their posts as usual. Even the most rigorous soldiers, facing the endless desert, would not help but dawdle and slack off for trivial matters. No one noticed that the invisible ghost was approaching. A gust of wind blew, and the American soldier leaning against the checkpoint sneezed and rubbed his nose hard with his hand. The soldier standing opposite him yawned and moved the rifle hanging on his body out of boredom. No one would check the guard at this point. Their postures were very casual, at least not as professional as those in front of the camera. But at this moment, the soldier who sneezed earlier looked around. Clooney, did you notice anything? Thinks, a hair? The sleepy Clooney suddenly perked up. No, it might be my illusion. Shit, we are about to change shifts, don't tease me. Hearing the dialogue of these soldiers, Jiang Chen breathed a sigh of relief. If optical invisibility has a weakness, it is that it is difficult to achieve perfect invisibility in an environment with obvious light differences, and walking on the sand will leave footprints. In order to avoid being discovered, he tried his best to choose the main road with harder soil, that is, to pass through the checkpoint of Area 51 from the front. As for the problem of lighting, it can only be solved by walking close to the edge of the building. Judging from the number of patrols, this military base is indeed one of the most heavily guarded military bases in the United States. In addition to the patrols that stepped on every inch of the base with rifles and those invisible snipers, Jiang Chen also noticed that there were often helicopters flying in the sky. It was for this reason that he did not dare to turn off the optical invisibility for a moment. Fortunately, even in a heavily guarded base, decades of peace and stability would make people here relaxed. Jiang Chen did not encounter any trouble along the way. He successfully passed by the patrol team like a ghost under the cover of optical invisibility. Of course, he could not run around like a headless fly in such a large base. In the photos taken in advance, Jiang Chen had marked the key buildings for investigation on the map. These buildings include the large radio telescope, the fighter hangar, and several houses whose purpose is unclear. Arriving at the airport, Jiang Chen sneaked into the hangar. Here, he saw the unnamed test aircraft up close. These aircraft did not have cockpits, so they should be the legendary unmanned 6th generation aircraft. Jiang Chen hesitated for a while, wondering whether to install a few bombs on them and take these aircraft away when he left. However, he only hesitated for a while and gave up this plan. It would not be a good thing for him to make too much noise. If he poked this hornet's nest, he would probably have to impose martial law on the entire state of Nevada. It was impossible for him to walk back in such a large desert with optical invisibility. It was better to come quietly and leave quietly. Anyway, the purpose of his trip was not to blow up a few foreign planes. Behind the hangar was the radar station. This two-story building, like the giant bowl it was connected to, was placed in the corner of the base. Compared with the highly guarded hangars, garages, research institutes and other facilities, Jiang Chen could clearly see that the patrols here were much more lax. Hiding behind a concrete wall, Jiang Chen carefully avoided the two patrols that were walking in opposite directions from the main road, quickly moved to the back of the radar station, and looked out the window. At this time, the radar station was pitch black. It was obvious that all the detection tasks had been completed during the day, and there should be no researchers left inside. After estimating the height of the window, Jiang Chen finally glanced at the sentry tower not far away. This is a blind spot, or a blind spot for searchlights, and no light will shine here. From the storage space, Jiang Chen took out an electrostatic adsorption device similar to a suction cup. Although he didn't know what the principle of this thing was, he could easily control the adsorption between the suction cup and the wall by pressing the button on the handle. He knew nothing about the physics at the particle level, but that didn't stop him from using it. Jiang Chen put it on his arms and calves, and then stuck his arms to the wall like a gecko. He pressed the button on the right handle to release the adsorption between his right arm and left leg. Jiang Chen skillfully climbed his right hand up and swam towards the window as nimbly as a gecko. Fortunately, perhaps because the weather was too stuffy, the window was not locked. After climbing into the radar station, Jiang Chen first cautiously turned on the detection equipment and made sure that there were no infrared sensors or cameras in the room. Then he carefully looked at the room. The room was dark, but the night vision function on the tactical helmet solved this problem. The blue light curtain spread out in front of the field of vision, and everything in the room was clearly presented on Jiang Chen's retina. This seemed to be an office, with piles of documents neatly placed on a row of desks. Jiang Chen walked over and took a look. Although he could understand English, he had a headache with things that were too professional. Fortunately, he could ask for external help. The watch was connected to the exoskeleton computer, and Jiang Chen gave the control of the camera of the tactical helmet to the artificial intelligence in his watch. Jane, what are these documents written on? Astronomical observation data, some drafts, and some file reports. Do you want me to translate them for you? No, I don't think I can understand them, even if you translate them for me. See if there is any useful information in them, such as aliens, extraterrestrial civilizations, or related. Jiang Chen said with a headache. Aiming the camera at the file, Jiang Chen quickly flipped through the file, but unfortunately, Jane did not collect any useful information. Whether useful or not, these files were saved in the memory card. Leaving the office, Jiang Chen entered the corridor. The house number hanging above the door was a great help, with the function of each room clearly written in English. There are control rooms, meeting rooms, drawing rooms, etc. But these are not what Jiang Chen is looking for. What he is looking for is the archive room. Without a doubt, all the secrets will be stored there. After all, it is only a two-story building. Jiang Chen did not search for long before he found his target at the end of the corridor on the first floor. Chapter 886, Area 51's Black Technology. Click, accompanied by a faint creaking sound, the iron door was gently pushed open. Jiang Chen stepped into the archive room and looked around the layout of the room. In addition to the rows of file shelves, at the end of the file shelves, there were two server chassis the size of a closet. Seeing the two chassis, Jiang Chen was immediately delighted. If he had to go through the files in the entire archive room, he would be exhausted to death, and could not do it. But if they backed up the data in electronic devices, no matter how carefully they kept it, Jiang Chen could dig it out for them. He could even follow the clues and hack into something else. Restraining his inner excitement, Jiang Chen asked knowingly, Jane, can you hack into these two machines? It's easy. Jane said calmly in the same calm tone. Pulling out the data cable with an adjustable interface from his arm, Jiang Chen found the interface on the chassis and plugged the data cable in. Soon, several reading windows flashed on the screen of the tactical helmet. Jane integrated the computing resources of the chips of the watch and the exoskeleton, and soon broke through the firewall carefully built by American security experts. In fact, during the hacking process, Jane did not encounter any strong resistance at all. No matter how smart the hacker is, he cannot hack into a computer that is not connected to the internet at all. Similarly, if the computer is not connected to the internet at all, there is naturally no need to frequently update the firewall. Area 51 is such a military restricted area that is independent of the world. There will not be even 1 KB of data exchange between it and the internet, so there is naturally no so-called network security problem. As for where the hackers can sneak in, the Americans are not worried at all. There are dozens of Soviet spies stationed here. The sensors scattered outside the military base alone are enough to make it difficult for anyone who tries to approach here illegally. Jiang Chen waited patiently for the reading, watching the streams of data flash by. The download speed was increased to the limit, and Jane absorbed the confidential files stored in the server like a whale sucking water. For the artificial intelligence of the 22nd century, the firewalls installed by the United States for these two machines are like the building blocks stacked by children playing house, which are vulnerable. Half an hour later, with a slight sound, all the data bars turned into fragments of 0 and 1, disappearing on the screen of the tactical helmet. Over. Jiang announced the end of this silent battle in a calm tone. Jiang Chen did not rest, and immediately opened the 10 TB compressed file that Jiang downloaded to the memory card. If it were to review these files manually, it would take at least 1 or 2 months to sort out all the files. However, for artificial intelligence, it took less than half a minute to sort out all the projects by category. In these projects, Jiang Chen saw a lot of astonishing things. Project number 10,020 record name, improved OQ-180 unmanned stealth reconnaissance aircraft development direction, improve endurance, strengthen cruising speed, and enhance defense against EMP weapons. Development budget $1 billion US. Content. Looking through the information in the file, Jiang Chen's eyes gradually showed a trace of surprise. It seems that this EMP really scared the United States. He looked through more than a dozen projects, all of which were specially modified for EMP defense. For example, the size of electronic components of key equipment can be reduced as much as possible to weaken the high temperature generated by electromagnetic pulses. Even at the expense of a small amount of concealment and maneuverability, a special metal coating can be added to the fighter to form a Faraday cage. Under limited technological conditions, these methods are still effective. However, even the researchers at Area 51 have not found a good way to defend against EMP attacks on power grids, civilian facilities, and factories. However, the Pentagon has already established a project for this and allocated a budget of $5 billion to study how to silence EMPs that reach the US mainland. In addition, Area 51 seems to be studying a small 4-rotor attack drone. The shape of this drone is somewhat similar to the Beta 3 of the Future Group, but a hanging muzzle and ammunition supply bay are set at the bottom. At present, this drone has entered the testing phase, and researchers at Area 51 are finding ways to eliminate rotor noise and designing AI that can automatically identify enemy and friendly targets. It seems that, when it comes to issues related to national security, the United States is not soft-hearted in copying. As long as the appearance is changed at that time, who knows that this is a copycat version of the Beta 3 logistics drone. But Jiang Chen didn't care. As long as the Future Group maintained its technological lead, they could only chase after them forever, but they could never catch up. In addition to these projects, Jiang Chen also saw a number of black technology projects that were still in the planning stage and had not yet received investment. For example, the project with the registered name Northern Lights Arrival. By creating a special channel in the target's airspace, the solar wind can pass through the shielding of the geomagnetic field, allowing high-energy particles to cause electromagnetic pulse (EMP) effects over a wide range. However, this project did not receive enough budget. Obviously, the Pentagon did not believe that those whimsical researchers could find a way to open a hole in the geomagnetic field. Moreover, the solar wind passed through the shielding of the geomagnetic field for a long time, causing a wide area EMP effect, and also opened a large hole in the ozone layer. Regardless of the fact that the investment itself was a bottomless pit, no one could estimate how serious the environmental impact of such a whimsical weapon would be. If this channel that passed through the geomagnetic field could not be closed. It was possible that the surface creatures would become extinct. Jane, is this weapon possible? Jiang Chen asked. Jane paused for 2 seconds, probably to search the database of the apocalypse. At least in the NAC database, there is no such fantastic technology. Hearing this, Jiang Chen felt relieved and stopped caring about the northern lights and searched for information about the radio telescope according to the catalog. With Jane's help, Jiang Chen found the project numbered 12417 after a short search. This project is listed in the aerospace category. Project number 12417. Record name: Extraterrestrial Civilization Exploration Development Direction. Through radio telescopes, analyze the possibility of the existence of extraterrestrial civilizations within 50 light years of the Earth. Development budget: $300 million US. Content: ignore all the content that you don't understand. Just pick the key points. Jiang Chen looked down along the entry, and when he saw the research and development progress, his pupils shrank suddenly. Research and development progress. Subproject number 011, Gliese 581 Galaxy. Location: about 2 degrees north of the Libra star, about 20.5 light years away from the Earth. Analysis: spectral type M2.5V. Apparent magnitude is about plus 10.56. According to radio telescope observations, the surface of the 581G planet in the galaxy has active hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen and other element, and there is a high probability of water. The planet is tidally locked, the solar wind is relatively active, and the geomagnetic field conditions are unknown. There may be an atmosphere. There may be organisms distributed along the terminator. No regular electromagnetic waves were observed, and it is estimated that the possibility of its civilization is low, or it is below the Stone Age. Jiang Chen held his breath when he saw this. Gliese 581. This name is too familiar to him. But he never thought that Area 51's extraterrestrial civilization exploration project actually had a record of this planet. Although the rating of the civilization level is a bit ridiculous. Jiang Chen was silent for a long time looking at the lines of text. Just when he was thinking about whether to do something, suddenly, a shrill alarm sounded outside the window. Chapter 887. Burning. The night enveloped Los Angeles, and the brilliant neon lights embellished this bustling city into a city that never sleeps. The cool sea breeze blew across the streets, blowing away the heat accumulated during the day. The crowds on the street corners remained the same, and the halo of car lights laid out a layer of foggy outlines. This is the economic and cultural center of the west coast of North America. Hundreds of years of peace have accumulated unimaginable wealth here. Even though there have been some minor twists and turns recently, people's faces are not covered with heavy clouds. Regardless of their ethnicity, people are proud of this city from the bottom of their hearts, and believe that tomorrow will be better. Late at Night also belongs to Venice Avenue. Because of the recent attacks, the defense around the New Zealand embassy has been adjusted. After consulting the White House, the FBI assigned a part of its agents to assist the Los Angeles police in investigating the terrorist attacks that occurred in the parade, and the assigned part of the agents was replaced by the CIA. Wearing a black coat, Brad leaned against the door of the car. Because the target has been staying in the embassy these days, as Lawrence's capable subordinate, he temporarily took over the embassy defense work. Looking at the lights in the embassy, Brad couldn't help but feel a little bored. No matter how arrogant the terrorists were, they couldn't have the strength and courage to crash into the New Zealand embassy, which was jointly guarded by the FBI and the CIA. Support helicopters were on standby at the FBI branch's helipad, and the FBI sniper squad was deployed not far away. It's no exaggeration to say that the security level here is second only to 3 places: the Pentagon, the White House, and Congress. Like a door god, the CIA agent standing opposite him handed over a cigarette and grinned. "Do you want to smoke?" "Thank you." Brad took the cigarette and put it in his mouth, took out a lighter, and lit the cigarette. The CIA agent who handed him the cigarette couldn't wait to borrow the lighter, lit one for himself, and blew a smoke ring happily. "My name is Iwin Keynes. What's yours?" "Brad Wayne." "How many missions have you been on?" Keynes asked. "I don't remember." Brad shook his head. Keynes's face showed a hint of surprise, and then a look of interest emerged. Don't remember? Shit, you must be an old friend. Have you been to Iraq? No, my work is mainly in China. Brad shook his head. He had begun to feel that the man in front of him was a bit chatty. However, Mr. Keynes was not aware of it at all. Instead of stopping talking, he vividly talked about his service in Iraq. I've been there. It's terrible. There are sand, camels, and bombs everywhere. Listening to the endless voice of his colleague opposite, Brad frowned slightly. Smoking is okay, but chatting while on duty is not so good. Anyone with a little experience knows that chatting will distract attention and weaken the ability to respond to emergencies. Although he didn't think anything would happen, attitude is a very critical issue. Brad can now conclude that this agent is most likely a newcomer, and the reason for withdrawing from the front line is probably because of his serious chatterbox that affected the mission. Turning his eyes to the street across the street, Brad selectively ignored him. Why would they film a newcomer here? What on earth were those idiots from the CIA thinking? Across the street, a truck with a Hollywood movie poster on it slowly stopped by the roadside. The car seemed to have some kind of problem. The owner pushed open the door and got out of the car. He walked around the tire for a few times, took out his phone, and seemed to call the mechanic, then walked to the store next to him. Just as Brad was trying to see what movie was being advertised on the poster, a similar truck appeared on the other side of the road, slowly driving over here with the traffic. At this moment, Brad frowned slightly, and an indescribable sense of disobedience surged into his heart. Almost subconsciously, he reached out and took off the walkie-talkie on his shoulder. Jamie, go check the truck 20 meters to your left. Understood. The plainclothes agent standing next to the car not far away walked towards the truck parked on the roadside. First glanced at the things on the driver's seat, and then walked towards the cargo box behind the truck. However, at this moment, the truck passing by the road in front of the embassy suddenly stopped in the middle of the road. There's something wrong with that car. Keynes looked at the middle of the road and said what Brad was thinking. However, before everyone could react, a flame suddenly jumped out from behind the cargo box of the truck in the middle of the road. Boom. A crimson fireball suddenly enveloped the entire truck. The shockwave even overturned the car following behind, shattering the windows of all vehicles within a radius of 10 meters, as well as the glass windows of the store. Lawrence suddenly lowered his head, and the flying debris swept over his head almost at the same time. However, Keynes, who was standing next to him, was not so lucky. A pool of blood had already been scattered on the iron door behind him, and aluminum alloy fragments cruelly pierced his neck and chest. The explosion happened quite suddenly. The cars that were scrambling to escape collided with each other, and the traffic was first thrown into chaos. People on the street screamed and fled, and the brave ones took out their mobile phones to call the police while running. The car's anti-theft alarm sounded loudly, exaggerating the chaos on the street. Although the entrance of the embassy is 10 meters away from the road, this distance is nothing for the bomb. Brad immediately pulled out the pistol in his arms and aimed it at the still burning wreckage and the chaotic crowd. In an instant, Brad had sorted out the attacker's thoughts. The first wave of attacks was just to create chaos. The real attack was the second wave. Damn, are they crazy? Brad's face was grim, his teeth clenched, staring at the fleeing crowd, guarding against possible attackers, and at the same time reaching his hand to his shoulder, reporting the situation here to the FBI Los Angeles branch. A terrorist attack occurred in front of the New Zealand embassy. Repeat, a terrorist attack occurred in front of the New Zealand embassy. The fire truck had already felt it first, and the firefighters wearing respirators and carrying cans rushed to the burning wreckage in the middle of the road. However, at this moment, Brad found that Jamie, who went to investigate the truck parked on the roadside not far away, had fallen in a pool of blood. The door of the truck had already been opened, and a team of soldiers armed to the teeth with black dragon scale armor jumped on the road with assault rifles. Without any identity markings, they loaded their guns in unison and spread out to the surrounding bunkers like a professional army, with the muzzles of the guns in their hands already pointed far away. Brad's pupils shrank suddenly. No matter who they are, one thing is certain, they are definitely not SWAT coming to support. Chapter 888, Battle of Los Angeles. On the streets of Los Angeles, Venice Street, alarm bells and gunshots rang out one after another. The police had blocked the street and sent almost all the police forces in the nearby area to the site of the attack. However, this did not change the decline of the Los Angeles police. Their firepower is too strong. We need support. SWAT is on the way. Hold on. Damn, what is a sniper doing? Brad huddled behind the car, restraining his manic heartbeat, and seized the opportunity to fight back with his pistol. However, facing those unknown armed forces who were armed to the teeth, the bullets of the M1911 were like tickling. Unless they hit the head or legs, they could not cause any substantial damage. Brad seriously suspected that those people were wearing dragon scale armor, or at least the same level of bulletproof vests. As for the Los Angeles police, Brad did not expect them to be of any help. The standard equipment of the Los Angeles police is the Glock pistol, and at most there are 1 or 2 shotguns. The state legislature has not passed the Los Angeles police's request to equip automatic weapons. So in some American blockbusters, you can often see police being suppressed by the automatic firepower of the gangsters. Before the SWAT tactical team arrived, an office building 800 meters away, on the roof of this 60-story building, you can overlook the entire Venice Street. A soldier with a black hood covering his face, leaving only his eyes, mouth, and nose exposed, was lying on the edge of the roof, adjusting the sniper rifle in his hand in an orderly manner. Next to him was an observer, with a telescope in his hand, locked on the chaotic street. 3 o'clock direction, 871 meters, 2 targets. Received. 3 seconds later, the sniper pulled the trigger. Next to the ventilation vent not far behind the 2 people, 2 bodies lay quietly. From the logo on their clothes, it can be seen that they belong to the FBI. Whoosh, at the moment, when he heard the sound of the bullet breaking through the air, Brad watched his comrade in arms being hit in the head by a bullet, and his brain mixed with blood was scattered all over the ground like tofu brain. His thinking came to a standstill. Fear climbed up his brain like poison, but this discomfort did not last long. The next moment, his consciousness was violently pulled out of his body by the bullet that fell from the sky. FBI and CIA agents who were suppressed by automatic weapons behind the bunkers were killed one after another by sniper rifles. 12 armed men in black combat uniforms divided into 3 groups, kept firing alternately, and moved towards the direction of the New Zealand embassy in an encirclement. The Los Angeles police were suppressed behind the police car and had no chance to stick their heads out to fight back. Fortunately, SWAT responded as quickly as ever. 4 police helicopters quickly arrived at the battlefield. The SWAT, also armed in black, quickly roped down on the road after the helicopters stopped. Equipped with automatic weapons, their firepower was far greater than that of the Los Angeles police. But, bang, 2 gunshots. 1 sniper bullet hit the concrete road surface, and the other hit the propeller bearing of the helicopter, creating dazzling sparks. The helicopter hovering above the road shook violently and fell sideways into the building on the side of the road. The propellers were like rolling blades, cutting into the concrete wall. The SWAT special forces that had not yet landed on the ground were like grasshoppers on a rope, crashing into the building along with the helicopter. While shooting down the helicopter, the sniper also revealed his coordinates. Enemy snipers found. Coordinates received. On the way. The SWAT special forces that landed on the highway immediately exchanged fire with the unknown armed forces. The 2 sides were equal in firepower, but in terms of tactics, these battle-hardened special forces were actually inferior to those unknown armed forces. At this moment, a modified van rushed out of the underground garage next to it, and the remote-controlled machine gun inserted on the top unleashed fierce firepower in the direction of the SWAT and the police car. The police lying behind the police car could only watch the unknown armed forces rush into the embassy. Heavy machine gun. It's a heavy machine gun. Damn it, how did they get this thing into Los Angeles? Holding the pistol tightly, a policeman shouted in fear with a trembling voice. This is SWAT. The other side is equipped with heavy firepower. Request support. Repeat. The SWAT captain leaned against the back of the bunker, panting and asking for help from the headquarters. The support was on the way. The Los Angeles police had sent all the SWAT members, sitting in armored vehicles equipped with heavy weapons, to Venice Street in Los Angeles. Unfortunately, they encountered a traffic jam on the way to Venice Street. Just like the explosion in front of the New Zealand embassy, the other side detonated bombs on various traffic arteries leading to Venice Street, completely paralyzing the surrounding roads. The vehicles that were scrambling to escape didn't care about traffic rules and emergency lanes and crashed into a bull on the road. Even the casualties caused by the explosion itself were not as great as the traffic accidents caused by the chain reaction. In the past 10 years, the United States has suffered many terrorist attacks and shootings, but it is the first time to exchange fire with terrorists with such powerful firepower. No, they are definitely not simple terrorists, but more like experienced mercenaries. At Area 51 in Nevada, alarms were ringing inside the military base. Jiang Chen, who activated the optical invisibility, stood on the roof of the radar station and looked in the direction of the airport. Two F-35 fighter jets left the hangar, drove onto the runway, and took off urgently to the distance. On the apron, next to the Osprey helicopter, about 50 fully armed army soldiers had assembled. The entire military base was in motion, but there was no sense of chaos. It can be seen that the riot did not come from inside the base, but from outside the base. After clarifying this, Jiang Chen's heart gradually relaxed. Just 2 minutes ago, he thought he was discovered. Facing the encirclement of the entire military base, he really had no confidence in escaping without taking out the power armor that might expose his identity. But the relaxed state did not last long, and his brows were furrowed again. Even the military base was alarmed, so the scale of the riot must be large. It is foreseeable that the road from Nevada to California will inevitably be blocked. Even if the road is not blocked, a temporary checkpoint will be set up, but Jiang Chen's current identity is not convenient for the police to check. Then don't take the road. Go directly through the desert. It's theoretically possible, but just now, the fighter jets have taken off. It's almost impossible to drive across the desert at this time. Even though it's so dark and the desert is so vast, an off-road vehicle with a roaring engine is as bright as a lamp on the pilot's thermal imager. Jiang Chen would not take the chance that the pilots just didn't look at the thermal imager. Is it hiding here tonight? This is even more unrealistic. It will be even more difficult to leave here when the sun rises. Just when Jiang Chen was really in trouble, ZHUU's call came to his watch. Jiang Chen was stunned and answered the call immediately. However, to his surprise, a strange voice came from the other end of the phone. "Hello, Mr. Jiang Chen." Jiang Chen frowned with an ominous premonition. "Who are you?" "It doesn't matter who I am." The man's voice was filled with a triumphant smile. After a pause, he continued, "I think we need to have a good talk." Chapter 889 Hostage. The Singapore embassy was attacked by unknown armed forces, and Venice Street in Los Angeles was completely blocked. A total of 14 ordinary people, 8 agents, 11 Los Angeles police, and 6 SWAT were involved in the attack, and 37 people were injured. Even the Los Angeles SWAT tactical team that came to support was suppressed by the enemy's firepower behind the defense line. The blocked Venice Street was drawn with yellow lines, and police cars and reporters' broadcast vehicles surrounded the place. The fearless reporters even set up cameras to bring first-hand intelligence to the audience in the United States and even the world in front of the camera. Although the Los Angeles police intended to cover up their failure, they could not drive away so many cameras. 10 minutes ago, all the unknown armed forces had already entered the Singapore embassy and launched a fierce exchange of fire with the security guards in the embassy. According to the relevant regulations of the embassy community, although security personnel are allowed to carry weapons for self-defense, the weapons allowed to be brought into the embassy community are limited to non-automatic weapons such as pistols. It is obviously not enough to fight against those terrorists who are armed to the teeth with just a few small pistols. After getting rid of several security guards, the armed men, divided into 3 groups, broke through the embassy's defenses effortless, kicked open the wooden door blocked by the wardrobe, and rushed into the hall with rifles. So far, their actions have been smooth, but that's it. The leading captain raised his hand and clenched his fist, and the 3 mercenaries behind him understood and rushed to the direction of the stairs without delay. However, at this moment, a strong wind hit the captain from the side, and the sharp blade cut the Kevlar material at his throat fiercely. Goo. There was no scream, and one of the 4-man team had been killed. The soldiers who rushed to the stairs turned around immediately, but a scene that stunned them appeared. They saw their captain standing in a weird posture, as if there was an invisible hand behind him supporting him. However, despite their surprise, their hands did not stop moving at all. The 3 guns fired bullets, and the crossfire network mailed the dead captain fiercely. ZHUU activated the optical invisibility and held up her right arm, holding the body of the mercenary in a shield-like posture. There was no fear on her face, even though the impact from her right arm almost dislocated her joints. Even with her genetically enhanced arm strength, it was a bit difficult to cut the Kevlar material with a fruit knife. Knowing this, she threw away the fruit knife in her left hand without hesitation, raised her leg to pick up the assault rifle hanging on the ground, clamped the gun on the waist of the body with her left arm, and fired at the staircase. It was an effective counterattack. This unknown model of rifle obviously enhanced its penetration, and the luxurious wooden stairs were hit and sawdust flew. Taking advantage of the gap when the opposite side was hiding and changing magazines, ZHUU suddenly threw away the body and rolled to the side. As long as she escaped the sight of these mercenaries for 2 seconds, they would not be able to find her. However, at this moment, a flare was thrown down from the upper floor. As the phosphorescent fire flickered, smoke also jumped onto the roof at the same time. ZHUU frowned slightly, not understanding the meaning of the other party's actions. However, at this moment, the water splashing from the sky made her heartbeat drop to the bottom of the valley in an instant. The smoke from the flare triggered the smoke alarm. As the alarm sounded, water splashed from the ceiling, outlining the curve of her figure. Bang! Blood flowers burst on her shoulders, and the blood dyed the water droplets light red. The reinforced bullet barely broke through the thin layer of graphene material. ZHUU groaned and was about to escape to the door, but another bullet pierced her left leg. Without the slightest suspense, she fell awkwardly on the floor tiles mixed with mud and water. The muzzle of the gun was pointed at her head, and ZHUU closed her eyes. However, the expected gunshot did not sound. The other party stepped roughly on her slender neck with a force that almost killed her. Accompanied by the labored retching sound, white foam mixed with water droplets flowed from the corners of her mouth. At this time, she saw with a trance that a man squatted in front of her, took off the mask on his face, and said with a smile, "Optical invisibility? We have long suspected that you may have mastered this technology. It seems that we are right. Let's get to know each other. My name is Count Rothschild. You can call me Mr. Rothschild. This is a great surname, am I right? Then, beautiful lady, can I borrow the headphones on your head?" Without asking for her consent, Camt reached out and pulled off the headset on ZHUU's head. Talk. When the stranger said this, countless thoughts flashed through Jiang Chen's mind. Why did he use ZHUU's communication equipment? ZHUU was one of the earliest ghost agents and one of Asia's favorite apprentices. Jiang Chen thought he was pretty good to her and didn't think she would betray him. After all, every ghost agent will be implanted with a chip when he joins the job, and no traitor can survive safely after betrayal. At the moment they took the oath of office, their fate was tied to the chariot of future group. In the absence of intelligence, Jiang Chen chose the most conservative answer. What to talk about? Let me introduce myself. My name is Camt Rothschild. You can call me Mr. Rothschild. Of course, to distinguish me from my brother, you can also call me the gatekeeper, Camt said with a smile. Then what? Jiang Chen said lightly. Huh. Camt made an exaggerated sound of surprise, and the corners of his mouth curled up a little. It seems that you are not in Los Angeles now, otherwise you can't be unaware of what happened in your embassy. Jiang Chen didn't say anything, but his mind was turning quickly. What happened at the embassy? What could have happened? At this moment, Jiang Chen's eyes fell on the Osprey helicopter that took off not far away. What happened that required the army to be mobilized from Area 51 for support? Could it be? Suddenly, Jiang Chen felt a chill in his heart. Recalling the attack launched by the enemy in Munich, he thought of another almost unimaginable possibility. Do you think I'm bluffing? Camt shook his head and snapped his fingers at the mercenary next to him. Or do you think silence can solve the problem? The mercenary raised his rifle and smashed ZHU's 5 fingers on his right hand with the butt of the rifle. Ah. Capum. Although the pain was about to break through his mind, ZHUU still stubbornly suppressed the scream in his throat, and his bloodshot pupils stared at Kamet through his hair, stuck in the mud. If you don't scream, I'll be in trouble. Kamet grinned and kicked him hard on the forehead, kicking the annoying look aside. This kind of unwilling to yield look is so annoying, no matter how many times you see it. Enough. Jiang Chen stopped Kamet's next move in a deep voice, his eyes as cold as a blade, looking at the airport in the distance. Enough. Since it's your request. Kamet shrugged and retracted his foot that was about to kick out. I'm going to kill a little mouse first. Anyway, Mr. Jiang Chen won't care about the life and death of a mere mouse, not to mention that we have more valuable chips in our hands. Chattering. At the end, Kamet laughed morbidly. Jiang Chen quietly waited for him to laugh enough, gradually turning into panting, and then gradually calming down. Tell me your purpose. The entire Los Angeles is under lockdown, but I believe you will find a way to get back. I'll send you the coordinates on the map. There's a mobile phone on the roof of the target building. Pick it up, and I'll tell you what to do next. At this point, Kamet paused and changed his tone to a relaxed one. It's easy, isn't it? I hope I can get your call in 2 hours. Without giving Jiang Chen a chance to answer, Kamet hung up the phone. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 890, Long Lost Feeling. This is the first time such a serious terrorist attack has occurred in the United States since 9/11. The FBI and CIA were in a mess. No one knew where those heavily armed fighters came from, how they crossed the US border, and how they evaded customs to transport such fierce firepower into Los Angeles on the West Coast. A quarter of an hour had passed since the militants entered the embassy. The SWAT reinforcement finally arrived and surrounded the New Zealand embassy with police armored vehicles. The Los Angeles police had never been so embarrassed. The world-famous lapped SWAT team, the ancestor of all modern SWAT, was suppressed by the firepower of terrorists. After occupying the embassy, the militants placed light machine guns on the windows of the embassy and threatened the special forces who tried to approach with the hostages in their hands. These people neither put forward their demands nor expressed their intention to negotiate. For a time, they were in a stalemate. With the help of the internet, the impact of the attack spread to the entire United States and even the world through major social platforms at the first time. Looking at the rows of cameras and the cell phones held by the people, Lawrence's forehead was covered with cold sweat. 200 meters away, his partner Brad was lying next to the car at the door of the embassy. Although his head had been smashed by a sniper rifle, he could still recognize that the body belonged to his partner Brad. He still couldn't imagine that he had been away for such a short time and such a thing happened. The militants drove into Venice Street in a van, and the modified car ambushed in the underground garage. Are the CIA people blind? At this time, Sheriff Michael William of the Los Angeles Police Department got out of the car and walked towards him. We can't wait any longer. We should rush in to save people immediately. The reporters are watching. The later it is, the more unfavorable the situation will be for us. If the army doesn't come, let the SWAT people do it. 20 New Zealand embassy staff, as well as Jiang Chen and his CEO. The hostages in their hands are so great that even the White House dare not take risks. Do you understand what I mean, Sheriff William? Lawrence said with a gloomy face. Then we are just waiting here, Michael said, looking at the door of the embassy with hatred. This is the only way for now. Lawrence looked in the direction of the embassy. Even at this position, he could only see a rough outline. At this moment, the phone rang. Lawrence and Chief Inspector William looked at each other, and finally William stepped forward to answer the phone. As expected, it was from the White House, and it was the president's wife who called personally. As soon as the call was connected, she immediately asked, "What's the situation?" "It's terrible. We must prepare for the worst, Mr. William." Hillary interrupted him. "Is it? I don't care what means you use. I only ask for one thing. Jiang Chen must be alive. Do you understand? Chief Inspector William held his breath. His Adam's apple moved up and down, and he spoke after a while. Understood. After hanging up, Hillary pinched her sore brows and then called the new presidential palace far away on Koro Island. Things have developed to this point, and it is impossible to hide it. It would be more sincere to call them by yourself than to ask them by phone. Even now, the Americans still don't know that the bargaining chip that frightened them is not in this building. Camp Rothschild also didn't expect this. After searching all the possible places in the embassy where people might be hiding, they still couldn't find where Jiang Chen was hiding. The only possibility is that Jiang Chen fooled the FBI and didn't stay in the embassy as he claimed, but sneaked away to another place. Since there is optical invisibility as a cover, it shouldn't be difficult to avoid the FBI's eyes. Jiang Chen is not here. From this point of view, this operation has failed. But fortunately, Xia Xiaoyu is here, and they still have a backup plan. According to the intelligence of the Freemasons, this woman named Xia Xiaoyu is not only the CEO of the Future Group, but also the mistress of the owner of the Future Group. Cam doesn't know whether he can lure Jiang Chen out with her as a bargaining chip. After all, there are many women who are rumored to have a relationship with him beyond friendship. As for the identity of the group CEO, he didn't expect anything. After all, for a giant like Future Group, there are as many high-level workers as they want. He was betting that Jiang Chen would go get the phone instead of going to the US government and urging the US to immediately attack the militants in the embassy. The other party's identity has been found out. Camp Rothschild is a member of the Rothschild family's collateral branch. He disappeared in 2009 when he participated in a mountaineering club event in Europe. The total of 16 mercenaries he led were remnants of the Arrow Company and were members of the Poison Arrow Special Forces. In the desert between Nevada and California, Jiang Chen sat in the cockpit of the Aurora 20, adjusting the various instruments of the aircraft while listening to the report of the ghost agent deployed in Los Angeles. Got it? Anything else? Bernice asked. Go to a place for me. There may be someone waiting for me there. Keep an eye on him, but don't do anything yet. Jiang Chen stretched out his hand and clicked on his watch and transferred the coordinates sent to him by Cam to Bernice. After receiving the coordinates, Bernice bit her lower lip and opened her mouth to ask, "What's the problem?" Jiang Chen asked. No. Although she knew she was not qualified to ask, she hesitated for a moment and still asked, "Are you going to abandon the people in the embassy?" Her best friend and closest comrade in arms was in the embassy at the moment. If it weren't for the order from her superiors, she would have rushed in. Did I say that? Jiang Chen checked the weapon system and said lightly, "Sorry, I said too much. It's okay. Go quickly." After receiving the coordinates. After speaking, Jiang Chen hung up the communication, took a deep breath, and put his hand on the joystick. 15 minutes ago, he slipped out of Area 51, climbed over the sand dunes next to him at the fastest speed, came to the desert 2 kilometers away from the military base, and then returned to the end of the world. Half an hour later, Jiang Chen returned to the desert again, and with him came back from the end of the world. There was also an Aurora 20 loaded with ammunition. "Excuse me, you only have 2 hours of virtual flight time. It's probably not a good idea to operate the real machine directly." Jane's emotionless voice sounded in Jiang Chen's ears, but it did not change his decision. "I know." After confirming that there were no missteps, Jiang Chen slowly closed his eyes. Even a talented pilot needs to train for half a year. "That's my opinion too," Jane said. "But it doesn't apply to me." When he said this, Jiang Chen had already opened his eyes. The ink-colored pupils climbed up a layer of blood red. Within the field of vision, the unfamiliar instrument dials were more familiar than ever in his mind. Hidden gene code, unparalleled. "I haven't used it for a long time," Jiang Chen muttered to himself, pushing the throttle forward with his left hand and skillfully adjusting the direction of the engine with his right hand. The dust was blown to all directions by the jet of air. Under the action of lift, the Aurora 20 bounced vertically to a height of 10 to 20 meters. After a brief pause, the engine adjusted its direction and ejected a more violent airflow at the same time, like a streak of aurora rushing into the night sky. Chapter 891 Hard Landing. Will he go? Sitting opposite Kamat, Gassel, the deputy captain of the Poison Arrow mercenary group, asked in a deep voice. 50% probability, but it's worth a gamble. Kamat glanced at the machine gun in the window. After all, we don't have a better choice. The embassy has been surrounded by SWAT, and the muzzles of armored vehicles and even fully armed American soldiers can be seen outside the door. If it weren't for Jiang Chen and the New Zealand diplomats who might be in the embassy, to make the White House cautious, a certain country would have launched a strong attack long ago, because of its nature of never compromising with terrorists. If he goes. Gassel grinned, as if he was laughing, but there was a difference. Kamat laughed and leaned his rifle against the edge of the chair. Stephen will finish it for us. As if his fate had been decided, the two smiled at each other. But they didn't consider their own fate at all. From the moment they arrived in Los Angeles, they didn't plan to go back alive. For the gatekeeper, getting rid of Jiang Chen was like fulfilling his mission, and he was worthy of the Rothschild name and the meaning of existence given to him by the Freemasons. For the Poison Arrow mercenaries, they were fighting for both faith and revenge. What should we do with this guy? Gassel pointed his chin at ZHU, who was lying in a pool of blood. Because he was not bandaged, the agent had lost too much blood to the point of dying. If there was no further treatment, he might die soon. Kamat tapped the armrest with his fingers, pondered for a moment, and turned on the headset on his head. The call was quickly connected, and Kamat said slowly, "You have 30 minutes left. Perhaps I need to remind you that our patience is limited." After activating the Washang, the emotions were stripped from his body, and Jiang Chen said expressionlessly, "Oh." Kamat raised his eyebrows, and Jiang Chen's tone made him a little unpredictable. "If you haven't shown up in 30 minutes, 5 minutes will be enough." The communication was hung up. Kamat was stunned for a moment, and looked at Gassel. "What's wrong?" Gassel asked. "I always feel something is wrong." Kamat frowned. The Aurora 20, which was speeding above the clouds, did not attract the attention of the radar. After hanging up the communication, Jiang Chen pulled up the throttle. Under his operation, the Vortex engine turned around and began to slow down. The Aurora 20 also switched from a flying posture to a vertical takeoff and landing suspension posture in an instant. The horizontal speed dropped to 0. Jiang Chen reached out and untied the nylon buckle on his body, freeing himself from the restraint of the pilot's seat. The blood red faded from his pupils, and the unparalleled state was lifted in an instant. Jiang Chen reached out and slapped the joystick of the fighter, throwing the entire fighter into the storage space. The cold airflow wandered around him. Jiang Chen did not stay in the air for too long. The next moment he was transferred to the real world and touched the soft bed behind him. The T3 power armor was placed beside the bed. The shell was painted with anti-radar paint, emitting a faint bright silver glow. The legs and feet were equipped with impact-resistant modules, and the back was equipped with a slow descent jet. After the ship put on the power armor, Jiang Chen took a deep breath and disappeared into the room. On the streets of Venice, reporters pointed their guns and short barrels at the occupied embassy from afar and stood in front of the camera and reported in a flurry. The Los Angeles police stood at a loss behind the police car, looking at the SWAT special forces and FBI and CIA agents who were also at a loss. The US military was holding a combat meeting not far away, but it had been almost half an hour since they stepped off the Osprey transport plane, and they still did not move. Columbia TV reporter Bain squatted on the side of the road, nibbled the hot dog in his hand, patted his greasy hands, and was about to return to the camera when there was another whistling sound in the air. Bain looked up at the empty night sky, tilted his neck and thought, how many times has this happened? The US military's F-35s roared over Los Angeles, but they often only hovered briefly before returning to the nearby airbase. Perhaps they thought they could put pressure on the terrorists in this way, or let the American people know that the federal government did not do nothing. But the fact is that they did nothing. According to the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, the embassy enjoys a high degree of diplomatic immunity. Without the authorization of Singapore, it is not allowed to break into the embassy, even for the purpose of rescuing and eliminating terrorists. Yes, for some reason, Singapore refused the authorization of the United States to enter the embassy. At this time, if the US military enters the embassy, there is only one way, that is, to take back Singapore's right to use the leased land of the Los Angeles embassy. In short, it is to expel Singapore's diplomats. Of course, the United States cannot do this. It is better to say that Singapore's refusal to authorize has relieved Hillary. Facing fully armed mercenaries, she really does not have the confidence to launch a rescue without harming the hostages. And if Jiang Chen has a problem, it is hard to guarantee that the intercontinental missiles on the seabed will still be there. In response to questions from domestic and foreign reporters, the White House spokesperson hypocritically expressed regret for Singapore's refusal to authorize the US military to enter the Singapore embassy, and reiterated that any form of terrorism is the public enemy of all mankind, and the United States will never compromise with terrorism. You see, it's not that we are inactive, it's that Singapore doesn't allow us to ban it. Shaking his head, Bain withdrew his gaze from the night sky and was about to return to his camera. However, at this moment, his eyes looking up at the sky seemed to be glued to the sky, staring at the top of the embassy. The flames wrapped around the lower edge of the power armor, and from a distance it looked like a flickering meteor. The airflow condensed into a scorching cyclone, and the bowl-shaped impact-resistant module at the bottom of the foot, and fell vertically from the roof of the embassy with the roar of breaking the sound barrier. This is the blind spot of the militants in the embassy. Jiang Chen's eyes were fixed on the sloping roof, and the heat source information of the enemy unit had been marked in his window. As for how he did it, it all started with a chip implanted in the back of the ghost agent's neck and the camera in the embassy. Without any buffer, the power armor directly crushed the roof with a hard landing. Along with the dust, the 3 mercenaries in the hostage room were crushed into pieces, including the tiles of the second floor ceiling and floor. Outside Venice Street, reporters, police, SWAT, the army in a meeting, and the onlookers who didn't know the truth, all had only one expression, that is, undisguised dullness. They didn't know what that thing was, and when they reacted, it had already hit the new embassy. The entire embassy was like being bombarded, with a corner cut off. The hostages huddled in the corner were equally confused. Because they were in the corner, the collapse that happened in an instant did not cause much damage to them. The mercenaries standing in the center of the room were not so lucky. The mercenary with blood on his face reluctantly raised his pistol and pointed it at the steel monster that stood up from the dust. Jiang Chen reached out and pushed aside the steel and concrete debris hanging in front of him, ignoring the gun flames and bullets, and reached out to slap the pistol in his hand and grabbed his neck. Blood was spilled on the surface of the steel armor, making the already hideous armor even more bloodthirsty. Jiang Chen looked out the window and saw the American soldiers and SWAT at the door ready to move, but it was obvious that they had not yet obtained authorization to enter the embassy, or in other words, the new presidential palace, which had already discussed with Jiang Chen, did not approve the authorization for the United States to enter the embassy. Turning his head, Jiang Chen saw the eyes full of fear, but inexplicably relieved from behind the half-collapsed ruins. Except for the scratch on her forehead from the falling cement fragments and the dust on her body, Zha Xiaoyu did not suffer any injuries. Not only Zha Xiaoyu, but also the director of the new embassy and a group of diplomats were all safe and sound. After confirming the safety of the hostages, Jiang Chen slowly breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, I caught up. Burners should have made it by now. Just at this time, a communication request was sent to Jiang Chen's watch. We have reached the target location. We can start now. Jiang Chen said lightly. Yes. After receiving the order, Burner ended the communication. A cruel smile appeared on the corner of her mouth, and a trace of hostility flashed between Jiang Chen's eyes. The triangular barrel popped out from the steel right arm, and the buzz of death was noisy in the rotation. Jiang Chen stepped over the rubble and threw out the hummingbird drone and small drone terminal loaded with ammunition from the storage space. After setting the order to protect the hostages, he walked forward along the corridor. A strong wind came from the side, and the mercenary hiding behind the door swung the tactical short axe fiercely at the steel helmet. This fierce action seemed flawless, but he obviously did not consider the hardness of A-type steel. The axe blade could not even knock off a layer of iron on the helmet, and he was cut off his right arm by the dagger. Ignoring the mercenary who fell to the ground screaming and bleeding like a column, Jiang Chen continued to move forward. The mercenaries crouching behind the bunker vented their fear in the bullets of the rifle, trying to use firepower to force back the killing armor. However, the jumping sparks reflected in their pupils. Even the special rifle ammunition with enhanced armor-piercing performance for the mechanical exoskeleton of starring trade could not resist the defense of the opponent. The grenade was thrown at Jiang Chen. The hot wind from the explosion blew across the surface of the armor, and except for a series of clanging sounds, it did not bring any comfort to the mercenaries, who were completely terrified. The fear did not last long, including the upcoming pain. Jiang Chen raised the rotating triangular barrel and pulled the trigger. In an orange-yellow trajectory, blood and fire ended their lives. Chapter 892. This is not up to you. The light bulb flickered unsteadily, and the lights in the room were dimming. Kamet pointed his rifle at his body, shook his dizzy head, and struggled to get up from the ground, just in case. Gassel, who was sitting next to him before, also pointed his rifle at his body in a panic. Just now, the whole embassy was like being hit by a missile. The huge impact shattered all the ceilings and fell to the ground, and also knocked the two people to the ground. Shit, what just happened? Gassel sputtered and glanced out the window subconsciously. Fortunately, the American soldiers were just ready to break in, but did not take the next step. I don't know. Kamet squeezed out this sentence with an uncertain expression, and opened the safety of the rifle in his hand. Are you going to tear up the hostages? Gassel said solemnly. Tear up some first. If you don't respond to such a provocative move, and let the other party think that you are bluffing, it will be a headache. After saying this, Kamet put the rifle back on his waist, pulled out his pistol, and looked at the place where the little girl was lying. However, what surprised him was that the pool of blood on the ground was still there, but the person was gone. Kamet cursed inwardly. He was really careless. The bullet penetrated her combat uniform at that time, and the optical invisibility was invalid. Because he thought that she had lost her combat effectiveness and would not live long, even if she was left alone due to excessive blood loss, he tied her up and threw her in the corner and ignored her. Unexpectedly, this combat uniform would not be completely invalidated due to damage. Unexpectedly, she could still move with such injuries. Kamet and Gassel immediately raised the muzzle of the gun, and their pupils shrank in the room. When the optical invisibility moves, it will cause subtle ripples around it. As long as the attention is focused enough, it is not difficult to detect it. Half a minute later, dense gunshots were heard downstairs, and a strong sense of uneasiness crept into his heart. What happened next happened to confirm his premonition. The door was kicked open, and Gassel raised his gun reflexively. However, at this moment, ZHUU moved. A hand took out the dagger from his waist, and with a flash of cold light, he cut his throat without any suspense. Kamet, who was not far away, turned the gun around, but before he could aim, a black shadow came from the door, and the weight of more than 100 pounds directly knocked him out. Coughing up a mouthful of blood, Kamet pushed away the body of a mercenary on top of him, and reached out with difficulty to touch the gun, but 3 short gunshots broke his extravagant hope. Holding his right arm broken by the bullet in his left hand, his face was twisted in pain. Kamet's eyes flashed with determination, and relying on his strong will, he loosened his left hand holding his right arm, and touched the detonator on his waist. The modified van parked in the garage was loaded with 200 kilograms of explosives. As long as he pressed the detonator, the entire embassy would be blown up. However, when he pulled the trigger, the expected explosion did not occur. The optical invisibility was forcibly lifted, and ZHUU appeared next to Gassel's body. The blood on his body could no longer be identified. A round tube shaped like a Coke can was thrown casually from Jiang Chen's hand and slowly rolled down in front of Kamet, but he did not notice it. He just stared at the trigger in his hand with his eyes wide open in disbelief. Have you heard of EMP? You always have such a short memory. Jiang Chen shook his head. Impossible. This is impossible. There is a heating wire installed in the bomb. Even if it is EMP, it should directly trigger the bomb to explode. Kamet muttered to himself, even forgetting the pain in his body. We can make EMP bigger, so we can also make it smaller. For example, the round tube in front of you is called an EMP grenade. Without paying attention to the dazed Kamet, Jiang Chen walked to ZHUU's side, kicked Gassel, who was lying on her, looked at the shocking wound on her shoulder, sighed, squatted down and picked her up. "You did a good job, sleep for a while," Jiang Chen whispered, put the unconscious girl on the sofa beside him, and released the Beta 4 medical drone from the storage space, pointing gently in her direction. Kamat stared at this sight in amazement, falling into even stronger confusion and shock. He couldn't understand where the drone came from. He didn't need to understand, because soon he would go to hell with his surname. Walking in front of Kamat, Jiang Chen ignored the trembling pistol, took it off lightly, and threw it aside. "I heard you're the gatekeeper." A drop of cold sweat slid down his forehead, and Kamat said with difficulty, You're Jiang Chen?" "Yes." Jiang Chen saw many wonderful expressions in Kamat's eyes, and the most wonderful one was probably disbelief. Perhaps because he had been in a high position for a long time, the Freemasons had equated him with people like Carmen Rothschild and Luke Joyce, and forgot that he had gone deep into his enemy's rear in the Ukrainian war zone alone. Before achieving today's achievements, his own combat effectiveness was already at the top of what humans could achieve. Even though he seldom takes action now, even Robert Downey Jr., the heir of Stark Industries, did not say that he would give his Iron Man suit to his subordinates and completely retreat behind the scenes, right? Realizing that he had underestimated Jiang Chen's fighting ability, the detonator fell to the floor, and Cam's fingers slowly relaxed. "I won't tell you anything." Jiang Chen raised his eyebrows, and a syringe had already appeared in his hand covered with steel armor. "That's not up to you." In the eastern suburbs of Los Angeles, Night Road 13th Street, the originally brightly lit street merged into the curtain of night early. On the roof of a shopping mall building, the cold wind blew wantonly, but it could not cool down the beating heart. Standing behind the water tank on the roof, Stephen looked in the direction of the staircase entrance. He repeatedly put his hand into the windbreaker, as if the cold metal texture could cool down the restlessness in his heart. Will he come? Stephen didn't know. Jiang Chen was not in the embassy, and the operation had failed. The change from assassination to kidnapping was originally a helpless response, and the phone placed at the rooftop stairs was just a safety precaution for this operation. However, no one could guarantee whether this insurance would work. Referring to the last CIA operation in China, the other party did have a history of taking risks alone for the female CEO. But people will change after all, and if he really chooses to collect the bodies of the entire new embassy, they can do nothing about it. At this moment, there was a sound from the direction of the stairs. Stephen immediately perked up. His hand slowly left his pocket, revealing the pistol hidden in his windbreaker. The door opened gently. However, no one seemed to come up. Stephen stared at the stairs not far away, holding his breath and opening the safety of the pistol. However, at this moment, a cold touch pressed against the back of his head, causing his pounding heart to suddenly fall to the bottom. A cold female voice sounded from behind. "Don't move." Chapter 893 The Weight of Chips. When the embassy was hit by the missile, Venice Street was completely boiling. A corner of the entire embassy was cut off, exposing the steel bars in the concrete. The splashing cement blocks even hit the armored vehicle at the street entrance, showing the strong impact. The American soldier leaning against the back of the armored vehicle stuck his head out and looked at the messy embassy and couldn't help but say, "WTF? What is that thing? Missile? Or something else? Nothing like. Do you think the thing that just fell looks like a person?" If the police hadn't tried their best to stop them, those reporters would have wanted to rush into the embassy immediately. They were eager to know what had just hit the embassy, and they had reason to believe that the audience waiting in front of the TV also wanted to know this urgently. The SWAT leaned against the door of the embassy, with the automatic rifles in their hands already loaded, just waiting for the order from the superior to rush in and teach those terrorists who had beaten them to a lesson before. However, facing the ready report of his subordinates, Los Angeles Sheriff Michael Williams seemed quite hesitant. He has not yet obtained authorization from the White House. Or rather, the White House has not yet obtained authorization from the new country. Lawrence leaned against the street lamp and put the phone to his ear. This was the 10th call he had received. Half of them were from the White House, and half were from Congress and the FBI. Everyone wanted to know what had happened, what had hit the embassy, and whether the people in the embassy were still alive. And, had the war broken out? Lawrence saw with his peripheral vision that the people outside the cordon had no awareness of the seriousness of the situation. Many people were busy uploading the photos they had taken to Twitter or Facebook, sharing their shock at the moment. I swear, I saw it just now. It was definitely not a missile, it was a person. No, it was Iron Man. Jesus, this is crazy. Do superheroes really exist? Why haven't our police moved yet? What are they waiting for? Lawrence retracted his gaze, sighed, and cast his eyes on the half-collapsed embassy while praying in his heart. Don't let anything happen to you. With smoke coming out of the muzzle, Jiang Chen put away the tactical rifle in his hand and removed the power armor on his body. Jiang Chen had already asked for the information he wanted, so there was no need for him to let Camter Rothschild live. As a member of the Rothschild family, he was more than 3 generations away from Carmen by blood, and he had no value to be used as a bargaining chip. As a gatekeeper, he knew much more than Jiang Chen imagined. Every time the 33rd degree Freemason members held a secret meeting, he would stand at the door of the meeting room as a gatekeeper. Although he did not deliberately inquire about the content of the meeting, he was still very clear about the list of 33rd degree Freemason members and the meeting place. Taking out the satellite phone, Jiang Chen put the rifle aside, sat on the sofa, and called Aisha. "Are you okay?" Aisha's voice was rarely anxious and flustered. Hearing the familiar voice, Jiang Chen smiled with relief. "I'm fine. The crisis at the embassy has been resolved. In addition, I also found a lot of interesting intelligence from the gatekeeper." Aisha breathed a sigh of relief and whispered with a hint of complaint. "Next time, don't do this again." "Don't worry, I know my limits," Jiang Chen said indifferently, leaning on the cushions of the sofa, crossing his legs and continued. "The remaining work is to clean up. I need you to send more people to Europe. It's time to make a break." Aisha closed her eyes slightly and said seriously, "Leave it to me. Also, tell Zhang Yaping, I need the new government to put pressure on the US government. I just happen to have a very interesting confession in my hand, which happens to belong to a CIA agent." Jiang Chen grinned. "This will be a breakthrough for us to blackmail the White House." After hanging up the phone, Jiang Chen stretched and looked at ZHUU lying on another sofa. The Beta 4 drone had already performed a simple hemostasis and bandage treatment on her wound, and after completing the task, it hovered next to her. Jiang Chen called back the drone through the holographic screen and threw it back into the storage space. The drone downstairs was still hovering at the door of the hostage room, but there were no mercenaries alive in the entire villa. The power armor must not be hidden from everyone's eyes. I'm sure many rescued embassy staff will be puzzled by this. And why he was not in the embassy. These are all secrets that need to be kept. Although there are many troubles, Jiang Chen believes that Xia will definitely think of a solution for him. After handling the aftermath, when the outside world was in doubt about the situation in the embassy, Jiang Chen called the White House. After the call was connected, Jiang Chen took the initiative without hesitation and spoke in a calm but angry tone. "Mrs. Clinton, I need an explanation for this attack. I'm really sorry for what happened to you and your embassy staff, Mr. Jiang Chen. I understand your anger and pain, but please believe me, we are also victims of terrorism. A total of 40 Americans died in the attack. Some of them were police officers, and some were ordinary citizens. They might be the father of a child, or the husband of a wife." Although the tone was quite sincere, this attitude of putting herself in the position of a victim undoubtedly shirked all responsibility. Should we say that she is worthy of being the former Secretary of State? Hillary is undoubtedly a tough opponent in diplomatic issues. However, Jiang Chen interrupted her mercilessly. "Would you like to listen to a recording first?" Jiang Chen grinned. Hillary was slightly stunned, not understanding what Jiang Chen meant. "I'll take that as your consent." After leaving this sentence, Jiang Chen turned on the holographic screen of his watch and played the recording that Burness obtained through the truth serum torture. Wind sound. "Ghost agent, what are you doing here?" Steven, "Just in case." Ghost agent, "What does just in case mean?" Steven, "Literally. If he comes, I will kill him. If he doesn't come, then the operation fails." Ghost agent, "Who is he?" Steven, "Your boss, Jiang Chen." When the recording was halfway through, Jiang Chen noticed that the breathing on the other end of the phone almost froze. until half a minute after he turned off the recording. The other end of the phone did not say a word. The CIA is suspected of murdering invited foreign dignitaries and even colluding with terrorists. Once exposed, this scandal will not only destroy the diplomatic credibility that the United States has built for decades, but will also shake the foundation of the current federal government. If the Republicans use this as an excuse, the Hillary administration may become the shortest serving US president in a century. As Jiang Chen expected, this is a heavy enough bargaining chip. With a slight arc at the corner of his mouth, Jiang Chen leaned back on the sofa, patiently waiting for Hillary's answer. If you don't remember the name Stephen, I can remind you appropriately. His identity is the CIA's agent director, affiliated with the Ukraine Operations Group. And now, he is in our hands. After a long silence, Hillary stopped beating around the bush and spoke. Just say it directly. What do you want? Chapter 894 Encirclement and Suppression. While interrogating Stephen, we learned a very interesting piece of information. After attending the governor's party, he went back to Washington. When he came out of the CIA headquarters, he met a Jewish man and received a bribe from him. His name? Hillary asked. I don't know. Jiang Chen shook his head. As long as he is not stupid, he will not introduce himself to Stephen. Hillary said, we can't convict someone just because a bribe was provided by a Jewish person. After hearing Hillary's words, Jiang Chen laughed and continued. Mrs. Clinton, you have been in the White House for so long, don't you know? For some things, we don't need evidence at all. It is enough to know who the enemy is. There was a brief silence on the other side of the phone. Seeing that she still did not express her opinion, Jiang Chen continued. Starting from the 13 states of North America, the power of the Freemasons has been entrenched in the United States for too long, and its roots have penetrated every inch of this country. Look at Europe now. What have they done there? Since they were able to use special means to drive Merkel out of office yesterday, who can guarantee that it will not be Hillary who will step down tomorrow? Think about Kennedy, one of the few presidents in American history who is not a Freemason. Just now, in order to kill me, they dispatched a special forces unit and even instigated senior CIA officials to rebel. If this does not cross the bottom line of your country, then I really feel sad for you. After saying this, Jiang Chen stopped talking and did not speak again. He believed that things had developed to this point, and the White House would definitely make the right choice. In other words, the WASP consortium behind Hillary would make the right choice for her. The silence lasted for a long time, and Hillary slowly spoke. I need to discuss it with my chief of staff. The matter was of great importance, and she had to discuss it with some people. I hope to hear good news from you before dawn. Jiang Chen said with a smile. The terrorist attack that took place last night swept across the United States like a tidal wave. So far, no terrorist organization has claimed responsibility for the attack. However, in addition to speculating who the attacker was, people are more talking about who saved the hostages in the embassy. At the moment when the unknown substance hit the embassy, someone took a picture of it with a mobile phone. Although the short frame of the picture is quite blurry, people can still clearly distinguish that this is not a missile, but a human-shaped steel armor. When seeing this photo, many people instantly climaxed. Most of them are fans of Iron Man. It's hard to imagine, does Iron Man really exist? And just a few streets next to Hollywood? According to the camera frame rate and image analysis, the speed of the falling humanoid object should be above the speed of sound, or at least close to the speed of sound. Future Man Group's black technology? Maybe. After all, personally, I have not heard of any weapon that can be quickly deployed in this hard landing mode. If there is a person inside the steel armor, and it hits the ground at the speed of sound, there is no doubt that he will be broken into pieces if there are no protective measures. A military expert analyzed. An unnamed army captain said in an interview that after the attack, the Pentagon urgently transferred a company of troops from a nearby military base. And this army unit is from Area 51 at the junction of California and Nevada. According to informed sources, the mysterious steel armor may be a secret weapon developed by the Pentagon, Columbia TV reported. The hostages have been confirmed to be safe, and the Los Angeles police have lifted the blockade of Venice Avenue after a security check. At present, the New York embassy has not accepted any interviews with reporters. The FBI requested to enter the embassy for investigation, but the New York side has not approved the FBI's application for the time being, the New York Times reported. However, just as people were excitedly discussing who saved the hostages, a financial earthquake had quietly begun. The epicenter was located on Wall Street, from the headquarters of Goldman Sachs. When people walked on the streets of Wall Street, they unexpectedly found that the Goldman Sachs building was surrounded by FBI and police cars. Not long after, Lloyd Blankfein, CEO of Goldman Sachs, was handcuffed, walked out of the Goldman Sachs building in a low-key manner, and got into the FBI's special car. The White House then issued a relevant announcement, launching an investigation procedure against Goldman Sachs on 17 charges including financial fraud. Subsequently, the White House held a press conference to explain the legality of this investigation procedure. Goldman Sachs obviously could not surrender, and immediately issued an announcement on its official website and its holding media, accusing the White House of making a decision without any evidence, and claiming that the 17 charges were false accusations without evidence, and Goldman Sachs' legal team would actively respond. The White House's move also alarmed Congress. As we all know, Goldman Sachs Group belongs to the Goldman and Sachs families, both of which are German Jews, and have intermarriage relations with each other. The name of Goldman Sachs Group is derived from the names of the two families. After World War II, the relationship between the two families split, and then the Sachs family became the actual controller of Goldman Sachs Group. The Sachs family is one of the leaders of the North American Freemasonry. The White House's move against the Freemasons at this time is hard not to remind people of the tragedy that happened on the West Coast last night. Goldman Sachs was investigated, and the whole Wall Street was boiling. No financial group is clean, but since we are in a country ruled by law, everything must be based on law and evidence. The US Department of Justice dispatched the FBI to arrest the CEO of Goldman Sachs without solid evidence, which is undoubtedly suspected of violating regulations. Goldman Sachs' legal team is ready to respond to the lawsuit and even prepare to sue the Department of Justice. In this country with separation of powers, as long as you can afford a good enough lawyer, even black can be turned into white for you. As for winning this lawsuit, Goldman Sachs is full of confidence. However, the real battlefield is not in the court. Regardless of whether the charges are true or not, the scandal of a world-famous financial group suspected of fraud has caused a crisis of confidence that is enough to shake its stock price and even spread the aftermath to the entire financial industry. When the New York Stock Exchange opened that day, the stock price of Goldman Sachs, with a market value of $70 billion, plummeted all the way, even pulling the Dow Jones Index down 3 points. At the same time, Morgan Stanley, another major investment bank in the United States, immediately began to acquire Goldman Sachs and its affiliated industries. Some financial analysts commented that if the US Department of Justice finally nodded to this merger and integrated Morgan Stanley with Goldman Sachs, Wall Street might give birth to an unprecedented financial giant. Future Bank also showed great interest in Goldman Sachs. At the same time as Morgan Stanley acquired Goldman Sachs, Future Bank's North American branch also began to increase its holdings of Goldman Sachs shares. For a time, the entire Goldman Sachs group was pushed to the edge of a cliff, and the control of the Sachs family over this financial empire had fallen to a precarious level. Those who are interested can clearly see that Future Group and the North American WASP Consortium have openly shown their claws to the Jewish Consortium and launched a siege against Goldman Sachs Group. If Goldman Sachs Group falls, Wall Street will undoubtedly face an unprecedented reshuffle. Many people smelled a hint of something unusual. This day is going to change. Chapter 895. You should feel honored. The tragedy on Venice Street in Los Angeles cast a shadow over the city, but people's lives were not greatly affected. The next day, the streets of Los Angeles were still crowded, but less noisy. The financial tsunami that blew from the East Coast has sent its aftermath to the precarious West Coast. The entire North American and even global financial markets have become restless around Morgan Stanley's merger plan with Goldman Sachs. The originally turbulent crude oil market has made the global economy worse, and now the financial turmoil on Wall Street has pushed this wave of crisis to a peak. For the WASP Consortium, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Since the bankruptcy of Lehman Brothers, the only investment bank supporting the Freemasons on Wall Street is Goldman Sachs. If Goldman Sachs is acquired by Morgan Stanley, North America will return to the embrace of the Anglo-Saxons and drive the hated Jews back to Europe. Since the embryonic stage of the North American financial industry 300 years ago, the contradiction between Jews and Protestants has already laid the seeds for the conflict between the two sides. Although the two sides have reached an agreement, the competition and hostility between them have never changed. If it were in the past, the US Department of Justice would never allow Morgan Stanley to complete the merger of Goldman Sachs. A united Wall Street is not in the interests of the federal government. Even though Hillary's campaign funds include the Morgan family, the relationship between them is not subordinate, but collaborator. The president will seek benefits for the sponsor, but there is a premise here, that is, within a limited scope. The two sides maintain a tacit understanding of cooperation and competition, which constitutes the election ecology in North America. However, the emergence of the Future Group broke this tacit understanding. The CIA participated in the Los Angeles attack, which put the federal government in a very passive situation. If Jiang Chen made the evidence public, the federal government would not only face condemnation from the international community, but also pressure from the domestic side. After all, it was not only the security guards of the new embassy who died on Venice Street, but also civilians, FBI agents, Los Angeles police, and even CIA people themselves. The Republican Party is eyeing the position of the president. If the aftermath of this incident cannot be handled properly, Hillary is likely to face impeachment by Congress. Therefore, under the impetus of external factors, the Department of Justice acquiesced to Morgan Stanley's merger agreement. If Jiang Chen proposed that Future Bank acquire Goldman Sachs, the White House would definitely not agree. However, since it was an acquisition from Morgan Stanley, Hillary turned a blind eye. Although the ownership of the company has changed, it is still in the hands of the Americans. The amount involved in this acquisition plan is as high as $50 billion, and the assets involved are even more in the hundreds of billions. Such a huge amount of assets, even the Morgan family cannot swallow it alone. Including Boston First Bank, Brown Brothers Harriman Bank and many other investment banks, all sent salesmen to contact Goldman Sachs partners, trying to get a share of this robbery. Future Group was not left behind. David Smith, CEO of Future Bank, immediately flew to New York, USA after receiving Jiang Chen's call. As a former senior executive of Citibank, mergers and acquisitions are his best field. Jiang Chen gave him a budget of $5 billion, requiring him to acquire as many assets or shares of Goldman Sachs as possible. The CEO was investigated, and the FBI police car drove downstairs of the group's headquarters. The panic of investors has been reflected in the falling stock price. In order to maintain the ownership of Goldman Sachs, the Freemasons could only obtain funds by selling assets and buying back the shares from those wavering shareholders. The financial market was already filled with smoke, and the smoke of war was also ignited outside the financial field. The White House did not ask too much about what exactly hit the embassy that day. However, major American media showed great interest. Columbia Broadcasting Corporation simply stationed a broadcast vehicle at the new embassy, waiting for the mysterious hero wearing the iron suit to appear. However, they were destined to be disappointed. Because the main building of the embassy was severely damaged, and the Gaochan conference was about to begin in a few days, Jiang Chen simply booked his residence at the Hilton Hotel in San Francisco. Because it was a secret transfer, Jiang Chen did not attract the attention of the media when he left. When the media who were blocking the door realized that Jiang Chen was no longer there, it was already a few days later. Stephen Sinks, the largest individual shareholder of Goldman Sachs Group, was found dead at home by the New York police. The cause of death was a bullet in the head. The FBI has already intervened in the investigation and has preliminarily determined that the suspect is a middle-aged Hispanic man. He was arrested and imprisoned for burglary in 2013. After being released from prison, he worked as a mechanic in a car repair company. As if he was reading it to Jiang Chen on purpose, Lawrence, who was sitting in the driver's seat, held the newspaper and read it casually when Jiang Chen got in the car. Really? It's a sad story. Jiang Chen fastened his seatbelt and said casually, "Did you do it?" Lawrence glanced at Jiang Chen. According to the clues collected by the FBI, the weapons and equipment used by Kant and others may have been sponsored by the Senks family, and the Jewish businessman who had previously contacted Stephen was likely a member of the Senks family. Of course not. Jiang Chen looked at Lawrence's unbelieving expression and smiled. My dear friend, why do you think I did it? In fact, in the face of such a dispute involving hundreds of billions of dollars in interests, there is no need for me to do anything. They will do everything I need to do for me. Lawrence did not speak, which was considered as tacit agreement with Jiang Chen's statement. He put the newspaper aside and drove on the road. Bullet holes were still visible on Venice Street, but the broken shop windows had been replaced with new ones, and the dark burn marks in the middle of the road had been cleaned and repainted. The convoy quickly drove out of Venice Street and headed towards San Francisco. Sun Jiao and ZHU sat in another car, and 4 black cars in front, and behind them protected them steadily in the middle. Compared with a few days ago, Jiang Chen could clearly feel that the security level around him had been strengthened by at least twice. Obviously, the United States did not intend to lose face twice in the same matter, let alone at this last moment. However, the last attack could not be blamed on the security work. If Stephen had not used his authority to weaken the security around the embassy, it would have been impossible for a dozen mercenaries to reach the embassy gate. Soon the car arrived at the airport. When getting off the car, Lawrence said, "By the way, someone asked me to bring you a message." "What message?" "Yesterday at noon, CIA Director Naomi Madden submitted her resignation." When saying this, Lawrence looked into Jiang Chen's eyes. "Perhaps, should I express my happiness?" Jiang Chen teased Lawrence. "You should feel honored that at least 2 CIA directors were fired because of you." Jiang Chen shrugged. He agreed with Lawrence's statement very much, especially the word "at least." Presumably, in the near future, there will be many opportunities for both sides to deal with each other. Chapter 896 Important People. The Silicon Valley High-Tech Innovation Conference was held as scheduled. With the participation of Future Group, this high-tech summit representing cutting-edge technology was greatly enhanced. Although the organizers had previously considered the impact of the attack and had the idea of canceling this year's high-tech innovation conference, after consulting all participating parties, this high-tech summit was still held as scheduled under the expectation of the public. At the exhibition, Future Group reached an import and export agreement on graphene materials with a total of 117 large and medium-sized enterprises, establishing the position of Coral Island as a global graphene material trading center. In addition, Future Group fully acquired a pharmaceutical company located in Silicon Valley for $5.1 billion. It is expected that, after completing the business reorganization with Future Pharmaceuticals, it will be responsible for the sales and after-sales service of the Beta 4 drone in North America. In terms of cloud technology, Future Group has also achieved considerable results. Including Google and Microsoft, a total of 171 internet companies have reached supercomputing leasing agreements with Future Group, relying on the transmission speed of quantum satellites to obtain information processing services provided by the supercomputing center located in Coral Island. In terms of cost, the price offered by the Coral Island Supercomputing Center is only half of that of the Silicon Valley Supercomputing Center. Perhaps the latter's direct income is not as good as the former two, but its market prospects are not inferior to the former two. With the increasing popularity of the internet, cloud technology is the general trend of future development. In the near future, there will be fewer and fewer personal small servers, and even most of the work will be done in the cloud. Perhaps one day in the future, you will no longer need a CPU or even a computer, and you only need a browser to enjoy the services of a high-end computer. Strictly speaking, the Phantom Helmet is an application of cloud technology. After the 3-day Silicon Valley High-Tech Innovation Conference, Jiang Chen and Sun Jiao returned to Los Angeles from San Francisco, and this trip to the United States is coming to an end. Before returning to China, the premiere of Iron Curtain of Time and Space co-produced by Virtual Animation and Warner Bros. Was held at the Hollywood Chinese Theater. Jiang Chen originally planned to walk the red carpet, but considering that Warner Times and Future Group have invested a lot of publicity resources, the premiere scene is bound to be quite chaotic. For safety reasons, Jiang Chen gave up the idea of walking the red carpet at the premiere and boarded the plane back to Singapore. The Gulfstream plane took off from Los Angeles International Airport. Jiang Chen looked at the city gradually going away and slowly breathed a sigh of relief. The battle with the North American power of the Freemasons has not yet ended, but he himself is no longer suitable to stay here. The WASP consortium has already gained the upper hand. Although the old European consortiums such as the Rothschild family have helped, the United States will obviously not allow these European consortiums to get involved in Wall Street. The power of the Freemasons in North America will be weakened to the lowest point in history. They are unwilling to be behind the scenes and have aroused the vigilance of the United States. For Jiang Chen, this is also the best time to solve the problem of the Freemasons. When he returns to Singapore, the European action should also begin. Sitting opposite Jiang Chen, Xia Xiao looked at Jiang Chen, who was lost in thought, and a trace of confusion flashed in her eyes for the fourth time. When the embassy was occupied by terrorists, she originally thought she was dead. However, when she saw Jiang Chen, wearing a power armor, coming to save her alone, she felt that the softness in her heart, that had been buried for a long time, was touched again. Perhaps the girlish complex is the nature of every woman, or perhaps it is just because work has occupied the position of her other half for too long. Recalling that night, when she was drunk, and showed her true feelings, Xia Xiao's cheeks flushed slightly. If she could always stay in that state, it might not be bad. The confusion gradually faded from her eyes, and Xia Xiao suddenly woke up, and shook her head vigorously, to drive the unhealthy thoughts out of her mind. No, he already has a girlfriend. If she is asked to be a mistress, not only she can't accept it, her parents will definitely not accept it. What's more, he has been avoiding her. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but feel a little sad. Although Jiang Chen didn't do or say anything, the sensitivity of a woman made her faintly aware that Jiang Chen had been avoiding her feelings. She had noticed this since she was in Wanghai City before. Jiang Chen looked at Xia Xiao with a strange expression. She blushed, shook her head, and was confused. He didn't understand what was wrong with her. After thinking for a while, Jiang Chen asked with concern, "Are you feeling uncomfortable?" Jiang Chen suddenly asked, which scared Xia Xiao, who was thinking about it. Her mouth kept opening and closing, but she didn't say anything for a long time. Looking at her, Jiang Chen became more and more sure that his guess was correct, so he stood up. "I'll get you some air sickness medicine." However, just as he was about to leave his seat, Xia Xiao reached out and pinched his sleeves. She looked back at Jiang Chen with concern and shook her head gently. "I'm fine," Jiang Chen said. "Are you really okay? But you look very bad." Xia Xiao bit her lower lip lightly. After a long silence, she asked softly, "Why did you come to save me at that time?" Jiang Chen was stunned for a moment, then smiled. "Does this require a reason? But their target is you." "If," Jiang Chen interrupted Xia Xiao's slightly excited words. "No one can remain indifferent when an important person is in danger. I just did what I wanted to do." Xia Xiao could no longer hear the second half of the sentence. At this moment, she only felt a buzzing in her head. This feeling was like honey soaking into her heart. The feelings that had been buried for a long time finally got a response. Important people. After getting off the plane, Aisha suddenly threw herself into Jiang Chen's arms, and it took a while for her to let go of her hands holding him. Those eyes that could speak were full of worry and longing. Jiang Chen reached out and rubbed her soft chestnut hair and kissed her forehead lightly. "Sorry, I made you worry." Xia Xiao looked at the two people with a complicated look. When Jiang Chen kissed Aisha's forehead lightly, the annoying feeling came back. In order to make herself feel better, she quietly looked away. However, what she didn't notice was that her little action had been seen by a little girl. The sapphire-like eyes moved back and forth between Jiang Chen and Xia Xiao several times, and a sweet smile suddenly appeared on the corners of Aisha's mouth. Noticing Aisha's gaze, Xia Xiao subconsciously followed her gaze. However, for some reason, looking at her curved mouth, Xia Xiao felt her heartbeat speed up, as if a child who had done something wrong was discovered by an adult. The eyes only made contact for less than a second, and she took the initiative to escape the gaze, and looked at Jiang Chen, who was shaking hands with President Zhang. After a while, she calmed down her unnatural emotions. Although the Singapore government did not make a grand ceremony to pick up the plane according to Jiang Chen's request, President Zhang Yaping still came to the airport in person in his private capacity. Not only Zhang Yaping came to pick up the plane, but also other Singaporean politicians and Liberal Party members. It took a lot of time just to shake hands with everyone. While Jiang Chen was entertaining, Aisha quietly walked to Xia Xiao's side and whispered in her ear, "Can you come with me?" If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 897, Pearson's Church. For most foreigners, the name Pilsen may be unfamiliar. But when it comes to Pilsen beer, many people will react with sudden realization. Compared with many towns in the Czech Republic that are famous for their architecture or medieval monuments, Pilsen is different. It is the central city of the Western Czech Republic and is famous for its automobile industry and beer manufacturing industry. Beer, one of the 3 famous Czech wines, originated here, and the manufacturing plant of the well-known Eastern European automobile brand Skoda is also located here. Most of these industries are assets under the Rothschild family. Among these hundreds of millions of industries is the world-famous Pilsen Synagogue. Although it was almost destroyed by the Nazis during World War II, more than half a century has passed, and this ancient church has been repaired. Although it lacks some historical weight, the appearance is almost the same as the church it once was. In the church, Jews in groups of 3 or 2 are praying. The long-bearded priest gently stroked the Torah in his hand and recited unknown prayers in Hebrew. Brass lamp holders were inlaid on the wall, and candles flickered with tiny flames and swayed shadows in groups of 3 or 2. There was a heavy wooden door at the back of the church. Under the door handle, there was an all-seeing eye the size of a thumbnail. Through the wooden door was a spiral corridor, and dry bluestone brick steps led directly underground. At the end of the corridor was a wine cellar, and on the side of the wine cellar was a stone wall. The stone wall could not be opened from the outside. People outside could only open the door by giving a special password. After passing through the stone door, the space suddenly opened up, and there was a different world underground in the church. The ground was covered with Persian carpets worth more than gold and diamonds, and furniture carved from mahogany and yew wood was displayed around. Silver utensils with years on the table were placed, all of which showed luxury and splendor. This was the heart of the entire church, and also the heart of Freemasonry. At the end of this room was a meeting room. The door of the meeting room was open, and a young man was standing at the door. Originally there should be 2 people standing here, but one of them stayed in North America forever, and now there is only one left. When a secret meeting is held, they are the gatekeepers who guard the covenant. When a secret meeting needs it, they are the hounds that hunt the enemy. In history, they have not made many moves, but they have rarely failed. Among them, the more famous ones are Kennedy and 115 related witnesses, as well as Lincoln, the hero of the Civil War, which are among their masterpieces. But it is a coincidence that they have only failed 3 times in a century. Except for the head of state who swept across Europe, the other 2 are Chinese. At the conference table, 13 Freemasons of the 33rd degree have already taken their seats. The lord sitting at the head glanced at the conference table and his eyes stopped at the stranger sitting in the seat belonging to the Rothschild family. "Where's Carmen? He's in Sweden on business and can't come for the time being." James Rothschild crossed his fingers on the table, and the gold rings on his fingers sparkled in the light of the candle. "My dear brother asked me to represent the Rothschild family to attend this meeting. He finally realized my role. The direct blood serum of the 13 families will automatically become members of 33 degrees, but just as the 33 degree members are not only 13 families, not all 33 degree members are qualified to attend this level of meeting. Only the heads or heirs of the 13 families can speak at the conference table." Several members at the conference table looked at each other and saw strange expressions in each other's eyes. The Rothschild family is the head of the European Consortium, and they certainly have seen this Mr. James. As the youngest son of the old Rothschild, this Mr. James also has a certain degree of inheritance rights. However, compared with his brother. This James's talent is obviously not outstanding, or it can be said that his talent is not in business, but in women's bellies. Even though he had been trying hard to prove that his talent was not inferior to his brother, anyone with a discerning eye could see the gap between him and Carmen. Judging from the unconcealed smugness on his lips, the two were not on the same level. Without keeping his eyes on him for too long, the Lord withdrew his gaze and returned his attention to the meeting itself. I believe you must have known before you came that our compatriots' actions in North America had failed. Everyone had a bad expression on their faces, except for Mr. James, who had just been allowed to attend this high-level meeting representing the family, and was eager to prove himself in front of many allies. As soon as the Lord finished speaking, James Rothschild immediately stood up and spoke in an encouraging tone. Everyone, now is not the time to be depressed. We should formulate a more effective plan to nip this bud that threatens our great will in the bud. I propose that we should directly attack Oro Island, which is the foundation of the Future Group. As long as we incite the hatred of the people of New Country against the Future Group, we can cultivate pro-European forces in New Country, incite uprisings, and let the power of the Future Group be consumed in civil war. The representative of the Krupp family sitting opposite James frowned slightly and looked at the representative of the Bruce family next to him. They saw a trace of helplessness in each other's eyes. Inciting an uprising? Easier said than done. The Future Group has an imaginable prestige in New Country. In the past, the Freemasons had considered sending refugees and Africans to New Country to drag down the economy of New Country, thereby shaking the foundation of the Future Group's ability to maintain its monopoly. However, the New Country government simply did not buy it, or it could be said that the flourishing of nationalism in Asia does not have a universal sentiment at all. Even if they tried to incite human rights organizations to protest, the New Country government did not take them seriously at all. The gathering of the 33rd degree members is not a routine morning meeting of the company. Such impassioned speeches are meaningless. What needs to be discussed at this meeting is how to deal with the decline of Freemasonry in North America and the acquisition of Goldman Sachs by the WASP consortium headed by the Morgan family. The other party even resorted to such a despicable means as assassination. It is obvious that they have already planned to completely break off relations with the North American Jewish consortium and will no longer care about the means. If Goldman Sachs is acquired by Morgan Stanley, Freemasonry will be kicked out of Wall Street and the industries in North America will be affected immeasurably. However, they are not qualified to say this. After all, it was not the other party who took the lead in using such means. Mr. Rothschild, that's enough. The Lord smiled and nodded to James and motioned him to sit back in a friendly manner. Although he wanted to say something, seeing that the Lord had already said so, James opened his mouth, but in the end he said nothing, shrugged, and sat back in his seat honestly. We should discuss more constructive issues. Our allies in North America need our support. The trouble now is the US government. If the US Foreign Investment Committee insists on setting limits for our capital, the Senks family will certainly be unable to withstand the siege from the WASP consortium. The representative of the Krupp family stood up, glanced around at the allies present, and said in a deep voice, "We can start with the WTO and accuse the United States of suspected local protectionism in the Goldman Sachs acquisition case, and setting up obstacles for investors from Europe. As long as European capital can enter Wall Street, it will not be difficult to keep Goldman Sachs. The tragedy of Lehman Brothers must not be repeated. As for the Future Group, we can try to contact them and send a signal of easing. Russia is pressing forward on the Ukrainian issue, and its allies in North America have been hit hard. Now is not the best time to deal with them. We can put them aside for a while and use the European market as bait. They should not refuse us." Including the Lord sitting in the first seat, the representatives of various families present nodded. The European consortium has accumulated wealth for centuries. It is not difficult to come up with tens of billions of dollars to keep Goldman Sachs. Take the minerals held by major mining giants around the world. The wealth in their hands is calculated in trillions. As for the Future Group, as long as they are businessmen who would have trouble with money, although there are some small unpleasantness between the two sides, there have been many frictions between the two sides before, right? Since they could choose to endure before, there is no reason why they would not make the same choices before this time. Just throw out a little bait. Maybe you can draw them to your side. I agree with Mr. Krupp's proposal. I object. We are already on the opposite side of the future group. If we make concessions at this time, they may not accept our good intentions. We can send friendly signals first to stabilize the future group or usher. It is not wise to face too many enemies at the same time. We must solve the problem in North America first, and then consider other things. We can't give up the assassination of Jiang Chen, but we must do it more obscurely next time. As long as the future group is without him, it's nothing at all. Although there were controversial voices at the conference table, most family representatives still agreed with the Krupp family's proposal. James looked at the representatives of the Krupp family with a flash of disdain in his eyes. He could clearly feel that everyone present despised him. In their eyes, there was only his annoying brother, and they didn't mean to take him seriously at all. Don't these idiots know that he, James Rothschild, also has the right of inheritance? Why can't he get the respect that should belong to him? He no longer paid attention to what was discussed in the meeting, as his mind had wandered off to who knows where. Just as he was letting his thoughts wander, he suddenly smelled a faint unusual smell. It was as if something was burnt. Chapter 898 Fire. Have they done it? Yes. Well, I see. Carmen Rothschild hung up the phone, dropped the phone on the table, picked up the wine glass on the table again, and cast his eyes on the garden outside the window. It had just snowed here, and the windowsills were dotted with tiny icicles. The garden was a white and fluffy scene, and just looking at it made people feel the tranquility of winter. This is Rothschild's manor in Finland. Yes, he is not in Switzerland at all, but in Finland in northern Europe. And just half an hour ago, a fire broke out in the Pilsen church in southern Czech Republic. 13 Freemasons of the 33rd degree who were holding a secret meeting were all killed, and no one survived. Looking at the reflection on the window glass, Carmen's fingers gently tapped the wine glass, listening to the crisp sound, and fell into deep thought. Sure enough, his hunch was correct. Future Group has mastered some special interrogation methods. Referring to its leading position in neural access technology, it is very likely that it can directly scan the brain of the interrogated person through some device similar to the Phantom helmet. When Kamet failed in North America, he realized that the Masonic gathering place had been exposed. Even if the gatekeeper was loyal enough, the news reports also showed that he was killed on the spot by the new country security personnel when rescuing the hostages, but Carmen had to prepare for the worst. Sighing, Carmen drank the red wine in the glass, shook the remaining red wine in the glass, and a smile suddenly appeared at the corner of his mouth. Looking at the reflection that belonged to him, he whispered to himself, "It's better to die." He could also guess that this failure would definitely lead to the voice of reconciliation between the Freemasons and the Future Group. Although the 13 families are united because of common interests, as long as they are businessmen, they will weigh the pros and cons. However, weakness has always been the most naive idea. People always repeat the same mistakes. They have made it once during World War II. If it weren't for the North American allies, they might have been lost in the dust of history now. It's better to die. For a family of this level of Rothschild, the death of an heir or a head of the family is just a matter of confusion for a while. A machine will never be completely scrapped because of a broken gear. Even if Carmen died, the Rothschild family would not be unable to recover. As long as the direct lineage members are not completely dead, the death of an heir in the 13 families is no different from the death of a president in the United States. If hatred can extinguish all unrealistic ideas and reunite the shaken Freemasonry leaders, the cost of 13 lives is nothing. Of course, Carmen also admitted that there was his own selfishness in this. His younger brother James Rothschild has always been unwilling to be a rich man honestly, and has shown an enthusiasm for family affairs that is not in line with his status. If he can get rid of him with the help of the Future Group, it would be a good thing. Johnson, get ready to go. After drinking the red wine in the glass, Carmen put the glass on the windowsill and turned to the door. His bodyguard Johnson stood at the door like a iron tower, with no expression on his dark face. When Carmen passed by, he turned around and followed behind. Where are we going? To Europe, to clean up the mess. And, by the way, to take back the position of the Lord. Carmen put on her coat and stepped into the snow outside the manor. She turned her back to the northern manor and walked towards the garage with Johnson following her. The flying snowflakes were reflected in her pupils, and there was no extra expression on her angular face. Successful? Yes. I see. After hanging up the phone, Jiang Chen slowly breathed a sigh of relief. After using the truth serum to torture Cam to find out the location of the Freemason meeting, he immediately announced to the outside world that the hostage crisis had been resolved and released the news to the media that more than a dozen terrorists including Cam were shot dead on the spot in order to paralyze the Freemasonry's vigilance. Afterwards, the ghost agents stationed in Europe immediately went to the Czech Republic, arranged spies near the Paulson Church, and closely monitored the Freemasonry's movements. Finally, this morning, the Freemasonry held a secret meeting of 33rd degree members. The ghost agent seized the opportunity and acted decisively, burning the entire church in a sea of fire. Did anything good happen? Kerwin looked at Jiang Chen. I guess so. Putting away his phone, Jiang Chen cast his eyes on the large screen in the center of the Space Launch Center. When he learned that the space elevator project had made significant progress, he came here impatiently without even having time to go back to the villa to take a shower after getting off the plane. From the camera, we can see that a group of pioneer robots are towed by graphene cables, floating quietly in the synchronous orbit, surrounding a giant ring, and carrying out construction work in an orderly manner. The entire space station has taken shape. The ring as a counterweight has even been completed. As the graphene orbit is gradually completed, the ring will gradually move outward to keep the center of gravity of the entire space elevator on the synchronous orbit. With the help of pioneer robots, our construction speed is much faster. The rocket launched into the sky no longer needs to carry supplies, which saves a lot of transportation capacity at the Space Launch Center, and also saves a lot of budget for the entire project. Looking at the magnificent project on the screen, Kerwin explained to Jiang Chen with a proud look on his face. I only care about how long it will take to be completed. Jiang Chen asked. The space station is 90% complete, and the graphene tracks have all been transported to outer space. Once the space station is completed, the tracks can be gradually spliced onto the space station. The entire space elevator will be completed by mid-December at the latest. Kerwin answered excitedly. Mid-December, does that mean it will only take a month and a half? Hearing this, Jiang Chen nodded with relief. When this highway to space is completed, the space colonization plan of starring trade can also be fully launched. At present, the lunar colony has expanded to a scale of 50 people, which is doubled compared to a month ago. The scale of the lunar ice drilling wells and lunar soil collection stations deployed on the periphery of the colony has also expanded a lot. Based on the information provided by Jiang Chen, scientists in the colony have designed a helium-3 collection plan. At present, the helium-3 reserves in the colony have reached 2 kilograms. If all of them are used for fusion reaction with deuterium to generate electricity, it will be enough for the entire new country for 4 years. In addition, Kerwin also reported a good news to Jiang Chen. The first batch of Chinese cabbage grown on the lunar farm has matured and has been served on the tables of lunar colonists for the first time after being harvested. This breakthrough means that the lunar colony has initially achieved self-sufficiency in food. Although it is still quite difficult to completely get rid of imports from Earth, this breakthrough is undoubtedly exciting enough. This means that it is no longer just an illusory dream for people to move further away. Chapter 899 Spark Nuclear Fusion Generator. Jiang Chen gave the launch center the next instruction. The next time a supply rocket is launched to the lunar colony, the spark will be loaded on the rocket. The so-called spark is the model of the 5 nuclear fusion generators operating in the power room of Penglai City. After integrating the technology of the Qingshu nuclear power plant, the 6th block has realized the production of the spark nuclear fusion generator unit. In fact, for the present world, the difficulty of this kind of nuclear fusion generator lies mainly in the materials. Almost no materials in the 21st century can withstand high temperatures of tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of degrees. In order to make helium-3 and deuterium undergo nuclear fusion reaction, the temperature must be maintained at more than tens of millions of degrees. The Spark nuclear fusion generator unit uses cold fusion technology, and the core temperature is only 4,000 to 10,000 degrees. With the special materials of the end of the world, helium-3 and deuterium can stably undergo a huge reaction in the core and output trillions of electrical energy. Limited by the production process, the spark generator can only be completed in the 6th block. But it doesn't matter. The demand for fire seed is not high, and Jiang Chen has no plan to transplant the production process to the present world to increase production capacity. When Jiang Chen left the Space Launch Center, the sky had gradually darkened. Seeing that it was getting late, Jiang Chen called Aisha and said he would come back later. After finishing dinner in the cafeteria of the Space Launch Center, he boarded the returning yacht. When Jiang Chen returned home, it was already 9 o'clock in the evening. The villa was dark, and Aisha seemed to have gone to bed. Natasha went back to Russia for something, and was not at home for the past few days. Even with a body injected with genetic drugs, he couldn't help feeling a little tired after running around outside all day. After getting off the plane, he originally planned to go to the study to read for a while, but he really couldn't muster the energy, so he gave up the plan. Forget it, it's already this late, go to bed early. Jiang Chen yawned, didn't turn on the light, went up the stairs to the 2nd floor, and turned into the bathroom. Turning on the faucet, water dripped. After a comfortable shower, Jiang Chen felt that all the fatigue in his body was washed away, and he felt like he was alive again. After drying himself, he put on loose pajamas, walked out of the bathroom refreshed, humming a little tune as he walked towards his room. After opening the door, Jiang Chen was about to turn on the light, but he saw that the bed was slightly raised. Seeing this scene, he couldn't help but smile. This little girl, she was already waiting for him in bed. Is she so impatient? Thinking that he had been separated from Aisha for more than a week, Jiang Chen's lower abdomen couldn't help but rise a few strands of heat, dispelling the fatigue in his heart from bottom to top. Whenever he thought of her obedient manner when they were in love, no matter how many times he repeated it, he couldn't help but want to hug her tightly and give her his tenderness as much as possible. His eyes moved slightly, and Jiang Chen planned to give her a surprise, so he smiled, tiptoed to the bedside, took off his clothes, reached out to uncover a corner of the quilt, and gently leaned into the quilt. A whisper like a dream came from the quilt. Jiang Chen smiled slightly, slowly stretched out his hand, and groped and moved forward in the dark. But at this moment, Jiang Chen was stunned and frowned in confusion. Huh? Why does it feel a little wrong? As if to confirm Jiang Chen's guess, a short and suppressed cry came from under him. Jiang Chen was slightly startled, supported the bed with both hands and sat up, raised his hand, and pulled open the curtain beside the bed. With a whoosh, the curtain opened. The moonlight passed over the eaves of the window and sprinkled between the two. That waist, which could be held in one hand, was as smooth as silk under the bright moonlight. The jade rabbit, which could be held in one hand, was reserved but not without a hint of sensuality. The delicate neck was white and soft, with a little blush on the cheeks. Two crescent-like eyebrows slightly frowned, and pearly teeth faintly biting the lower lip. Beauty is like spring orchid, which is self-evident without being shy. However, now is obviously not the time to appreciate it. Even though the light was not bright, Jiang Chen also found that the person under him was not Aisha. And in his impression, Aisha never had the habit of sleeping naked. Xia Xiao's lips trembled slightly, looking at the eyes so close and the gradually heavy breathing. Her heart pounded fast. After getting off the plane in the morning, she did not go home directly, but went to the future building to deal with the things accumulated in the past week. Not only was she tired from work, but the conversation with Aisha after getting off the plane also made her feel confused, so that she didn't even eat dinner when she got home, and fell asleep after taking a shower. She moved in here before going to Los Angeles, but Aisha hadn't had time to prepare a room for her. She just found a clean room and walked in without thinking much because she was too tired. But she didn't expect it to be such a coincidence. If she had to blame someone, she could only blame Aisha for making the room too tidy. At first glance, it didn't look like anyone had lived there. It wasn't just Xia Xiao whose brain was in chaos. When his eyes met hers, Jiang Chen forgot what to say for a moment. The word sorry got stuck in his throat and he couldn't say it. Reason told him that he should get off her first and resolve the misunderstanding. But humans have never been purely rational creatures. It's more like emotions that drive human behavior and impulse. Sniffing the faint fragrance, Jiang Chen slowly leaned towards the beautiful face under the guidance of the scene. Xia Xiao's expression was a little struggling. In that struggle, there was expectation, resistance, and confusion. She admitted that she did have a good impression of Jiang Chen. No, it was like all love. Even though she resisted in her heart and tried to forget countless times, she could not completely cut it off from her heart. However, just as she gently closed her trembling eyelashes and prepared to give everything to Jiang Chen, the breath that was gradually approaching gradually went away. Xia Xiao slowly opened her eyes. There was a hint of confusion in her eyes when she looked at Jiang Chen. However, the two did not look into each other's eyes as before, and Jiang Chen subtly looked away. I'm sorry. He almost took action, but the resistance in her eyes before was like a basin of cold water, extinguishing the heat in his heart. He asked himself that he was a shameless bastard, but this did not mean that he had no bottom line. He could attack strangers without any scruples. He didn't mind playing around with people who were equally shameless. But for the important people around him, he admitted that he was sometimes beastly, but he was far from being a beast to the point of being hungry and indiscriminate. If she didn't want to, wouldn't his behavior be taking advantage of her good feelings and forcing her to do something she didn't want to do? What's more, he knew that Xia Xiao was a relatively traditional woman, and he definitely couldn't give her a traditional marriage. Xia Xiao's eyes were misty. For some reason, a trace of bitterness rose in her heart. Even she herself didn't know why this was happening. She didn't even understand whether she was looking forward to it or resisting it. Perhaps this was also the reason why she couldn't respond directly to Aisha's proposal. Just as the distance between the two gradually widened, the door of the room was gently pushed open. Chapter 900. I would like to share with you. In the silence, the sound of the door being pushed open was so clear. Xia Xiao looked towards the door and met Aisha's eyes, who was smiling. She felt like she was being caught in bed. Shyness filled her heart. She looked away and reached out to push Jiang Chen away, but unexpectedly, a slender hand reached out from the side and gently grasped her wrist. Looking towards the bed, Aisha was standing by the bed without her knowing when. Jiang Chen was also in an awkward position while doing push-ups. He looked at the sapphire blue pupils and felt a little embarrassed. Just as he was about to say something, Aisha's index finger gently touched his lips. Then, she turned to look at Xia Xiao, whose eyes were full of red glow, smiled gently, and said softly, "Can you give me the answer to the question from this morning?" Hearing Aisha's words, Xia Xiao hurriedly ran away from her sight, but behind her was the soft bed, and she had nowhere to escape. Question? Jiang Chen looked at Aisha beside him and forgot his current state for a moment and asked blankly. Aisha's bright eyes blinked gently, and very rarely, she did not directly respond to Jiang Chen's question. After hearing this, Xia Xiao's face was already blood red, and her beautiful eyes were full of panic and hesitation. In contrast to Jiang Chen, the sensitive Aisha caught more of the emotion called expectation from Xia Xiao's complex eyes. The so-called resistance was not a refusal from the heart, but just a frank reserve. After clarifying this, Aisha's mouth slightly smiled. She put her arms around Jiang Chen, and she, who had taken off her clothes, stuck to his back and pressed down. She had made up her mind a long time ago to push the two of them when necessary. Although she was a bit presumptuous, she had already made a decision for the two people who were not frank. The clouds and mist cast a shy veil over the moonlight, restraining her bright moonlight and hiding the exciting scene under the moonlight. Outside the window was the garden. The fence in the garden was intertwined by two vines, interspersed in the green bushes. At the end of the vines, unknown white flowers bloomed, and the fragrance spread until late at night. The next day, a ray of sunlight passed over the eaves of the window. When Jiang Chen opened his sleepy eyes, it was already noon. Looking at Xia Xiao's sleeping face like a kitten, and the soft touch of her arm like an octopus, his heart couldn't help but beat slightly. As if she felt his suddenly accelerated heartbeat, Aisha, who was lying on his chest, moved her cute little nose and licked the corner of her mouth lazily. Seeing this scene, Jiang Chen took a deep breath. If he wasn't worried about disturbing the two girls who were sleeping soundly, he really wanted to shout to vent the uncontrollable emotions in his heart at the moment. It's so cute. However, this warm scene did not last long. Xia Xiao frowned slightly and slowly opened her eyes, which were still a little confused. However, when her eyes fell on the clock on the bedside table, she suddenly jumped up from the bed like a squirrel whose tail was stepped on. It's already 10 o'clock. Today is not a weekend, but Monday. What's wrong? Why are you in such a hurry? Jiang Chen asked with a smile as he watched Xia Xiao hurriedly get up, admiring her body that was like a work of art. After groping for her black framed glasses from the bedside table and putting them on, Xia Xiao glared at Jiang Chen hatefully. What's wrong? Look at what time it is. However, at this moment, her face suddenly turned red, and she realized that she was not wearing anything at the moment. She immediately reached out to cover her key parts. Her face was red and almost bleeding, and she said weakly in a low voice, "Turn around. Turn around. I need to put on my clothes. Anyway, I've seen everything, and it won't hurt to look at it again." Although he complained in his heart, Jiang Chen obviously didn't say it out loud, but turned his head to the other side in a gentlemanly manner. With a sigh of relief, her heartbeat finally calmed down a lot. After confirming that Jiang Chen would not turn his head, she got out of bed carefully. Aisha was still asleep, and she didn't want to wake her up. On the one hand, she didn't want to wake her up, and on the other hand, she didn't know how to face her. After all, last night, under Aisha's guidance, the two of them were almost holding hands to meet the impact of the beast. Without even saying good morning, Xia Xiao put on her clothes and hurried to the bathroom. Resisting the pain of losing her virginity, she put on her professional clothes in the shortest time, put on light makeup, and walked towards the garage with her high heels thump thump thump. The morning's work had been ruined. It would probably be lunchtime by the time she got to the company. After being in the CEO position for so long, this was the first time she was so late, and it was because she slept in. Not long after Xia Xiao left, Aisha slowly opened her beautiful eyelashes. Obviously, she had woken up a long time ago, but had just been pretending to sleep. Looking at her lover's profile, Aisha curled the corners of her mouth sweetly, leaned close to Jiang Chen's ear, and whispered softly, "Did you have a good time last night?" Looking at the faint red marks on the bedsheet, Jiang Chen did not speak for a long time. Aisha kissed him lightly on the lips, and made him look at her. "She has always liked you. Do you mind?" Aisha gently shook her head. Her long smooth chestnut hair shone with beautiful golden edges in the sunlight. Although she didn't say a word, Jiang Chen had already gotten all the answers from her gentle eyes. He rubbed her hair lovingly and looked at her eyes that narrowed because of comfort. Jiang Chen suddenly remembered something and asked casually, "Speaking of which, what did you say to Xia Xiao when you got off the plane?" Aisha tilted her head and began to recount what happened at that time. At that time, Jiang Chen and others had just got off the plane. While Jiang Chen was busy entertaining the new country's dignitaries who came to pick him up, Aisha sneaked up on Xia Xiao. She took her to a corner of the airport and turned to look at her. "Do you like Jiang Chen?" Xia Xiao was slightly stunned when her thoughts were seen through. She subconsciously wanted to deny it, but when she saw the face of her rival in love, she didn't want to say those discouraging words. After all, she had made up her mind a long time ago to snatch Jiang Chen from her. "Yes, so what?" Xia Xiao said with a cold face. Surprisingly, she did not see any negative emotions on the little girl's face. Rather, the smile from the heart seemed to be happy for her frank answer. "That's great." Aisha took a half step forward, held her right hand, and said sincerely, "What's good about it?" Xia Xiao stared at her blankly. Her intuition told her that her expression was not pretended. But why? She was obviously her rival in love, and she was going to snatch her favorite person from her. Could it be that her charm was so non-threatening? That night, I was. If Aisha's previous sentence made her confused, then the next sentence directly made her brain freeze. The little girl held her hands and looked into her eyes sincerely with her sapphire eyes. "I believe you really love him. If you don't mind, I'm willing to share with you." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like, Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.